Right. Okay, if I can have your attention, good evening and welcome to the July 30th meeting of the governing body. I will call this meeting to order. If you'll direct your attention to Councilwoman Ortiz, who will provide the invocation. Stand as you are able, and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you this evening thanking you for all that you do. Thank you for watching over our city. We thank you for working this budget out because we need you, Lord. Oh, Heavenly Father, we thank you for all the events that have happened with no incidents. We thank you for that. Lord, we thank you for each and every council member and their family, and we ask that you put your head of protection around them. We ask that you put your head of protection around our public health and safety crew, the police officers, the firefighters, all those, the AMRs. Lord, we ask that you keep our families, and we ask that you keep our city safe. Lord, as we go into this budget time, we ask that you give us a clear mind. We ask that you make it clear what to cut out and what to add. And Lord, whatever it is that is not pleasing to you, I ask that you make it very clear to us. And Lord, as we go on, I ask a special prayer on the Betty Dunn family that are grieving, on Sister O'Neill, that the family of Sister O'Neill, who is also the sister of Mayor James McClinton. We ask that all those that are grieving, that are touched by those, that you ask that you put your loving arms around them and you touch them. In Jesus' name, I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Okay, first item on the agenda, roll call. Madam Clerk?
Mayor Pia,
Here.
Council Members Hiller,
Here.
Valdivia Acala,
Here.
Ortiz,
Here.
Banks,
Here.
Kell,
Here.
Miller, Dobler, Duncan,
Here.
and Hofer.
Here.
All right, we have 8 present with Council Members Miller and Dobler absent.
Okay, thank you. Move on to agenda item number 2, the appointments. Madam Clerk?
A is an advisory council appointment of Anthony Fidel to the City of Topeka Americans with Disabilities Act ADA Advisory Council for a term ending July 31, 2026. B is a board appointment recommending the appointments of Chris Carlson to the Board of Plumbing Examiners for a term ending July 31, 2026.
Okay, you've heard the appointments as read. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion to approve by Councilwoman Ortiz, second by Councilman Kell. Do the roll call, please.
All right, Miller's first. So, Council Members Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Acala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Banks,
Yes.
Kell.
Yes.
All right, we have 7 yes, the motion carries.
Okay, motion's been carried. Typically, when people are appointed, if they're present, we ask them to stand so we can acknowledge them stepping forward and thank them for their service. But even in their absence, I'd ask for a quick round of applause for those 2 people who have just been named. Thank you. We'll move on now to the consent agenda. Madam Clerk?
Items A and B are resolutions introduced by Councilmember Karen Hiller granting Arab Shrines and Topeka Foundry and Ironworks an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at C concerning noise prohibitions. C is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Karen Hiller approving a special event known as the Topeka Foundry and Ironworks Family Day. D is an ordinance introduced by Dr. Robert Perez allowing and approving city expenditures for the period of April 27th through May 31, 2024, and enumerating said expenditures therein. E is approval of an amendment to City of Topeka Contract Number 52221, a Public Works Engineering Contract between the City of Topeka and KBS Constructors Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $398,736 for pre-construction design build services for the design and reconstruction of a new fleet services maintenance facility. F is approval of a consultant contract for information technology between the City of Topeka and Blue Ally Technology Solutions in an amount not to exceed $681,378.02 for replacing the information technology Juniper switches for maintaining the system's network. B are minutes of the regular meeting of July 9, 2024. And H is application. There's one off-premise cereal malt beverage license for Discount Smokes located at 2021 Southwest 21st Street, and staff is recommending approval.
Okay. You've heard the consent agenda as read. Is there a motion from the body?
Move to approve.
Move to approve by Councilman Kell, second by Councilman Banks. Roll call, please.
Council members Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Council members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Banks,
Yes.
Kale,
Yes.
and Duncan.
Yes.
All right, we have 8 yes, the motion carries.
Motion's been carried, and now we'll move to agenda item 4, action items, if the clerk will read.
A is approval of a 3-year labor agreement between the City of Topeka and Fraternal Order of Police Lodge Number 3.
Okay, for this particular action item, we have 2 people signed up to speak. And I'm going to ask them to speak before the governing body takes this under discussion and moves on to this item. So, is Matt Blassingame present? Sergeant, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, governing body, Dr. Perez. My name is Matt Blassingame. I'm the Chief Labor Steward for the Topeka Fraternal Order of Police Lodge Number 3. We represent the men and women of the Topeka Police Department. The Topeka Police Department is currently experiencing a historic staffing shortage at a time when we've also experienced record crime. The men and women of our department are understaffed and overworked, but they continue to rise to the occasion to serve our community 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I cannot be prouder of the work they are doing to keep our community safe. The FOP and city staff have worked diligently to reach a tentative contract agreement that is fair and that will place us in a competitive position to recruit new hires and retain the officers we have. An applicant in our hiring process recently told our recruiting and hiring sergeant that he had decided to take a position at a competing agency. After reaching this tentative agreement, the sergeant reached out to the applicant and provided him with the newly proposed competitive wages. The new wages were competitive enough to attract the applicant back to TPD, and he is now in our academy that started just a couple weeks ago. I've also heard from current officers who are planning on staying longer with the department and not retiring early. This tentative agreement is already having the impact on recruiting and retention that we desperately need and are trying to achieve. I ask that the governing body vote in favor of this agreement. And that speaks to your support for keeping our community safe. I would like to thank City Attorney Stanley, former Chief Wheelis, Interim Chief Haltom, and the rest of the city's negotiation team for coming together to reach this tentative agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we have Mr. Ben Houston.
Good evening. Mr. Mayor, members of the governing body, Dr. Perez, thank you for the opportunity to speak here tonight. My name is Ben Husted, and I'm the president of Topeka Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 3. I would like to ask for your support of the labor agreement between the City of Topeka and FOP that is before you tonight. Establishing competitive wages and compensation is the first step in addressing the retention and recruitment difficulties facing the Topeka Police Department. Your actions tonight show your commitment to public safety in our community, and I thank you for that. I would also like to thank the city's negotiation team. The first page of this agreement states its purpose is to promote harmonious, orderly, and peaceful labor relations. I can say without a doubt that they upheld these values, resulting in a smooth and cooperative negotiation process, and I would hope that they could say the same for us. Despite staffing shortages, the men and women of the Topeka Police Department remain dedicated to serving and protecting the citizens of Topeka. And as always, the FOP is ready to work with city leadership to further public safety in our community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you. Honorable Mayor, members of the governing body. Interim Chief Jamie Halton, and I will walk you through this item.
Okay.
Mayor, President Lottie, thank you for giving us the opportunity to put this information before you this evening. I will start off by echoing what Ben Husted said. The negotiation process by both sides, I must say, was a very open dialogue and handled very professionally by both sides, more so than what I've seen previously. So I want to thank the FOP and their recruiting or their negotiation team for their efforts and for their positive attitude that they portrayed through this entire process. Is it on? So the city of Topeka and the FOP began negotiations in early June, reaching a tentative agreement in early July. The previous contract began January 1st, 2022, and is set to expire December 31st of 2024. Early in negotiations, the FOP expressed a desire to negotiate a 2-year term for their contract, but through conversation and the relationships that we've built, we were able to come to a tentative agreement on a 3-year contract. So in this case, that contract, if approved, would begin January 1st, 2025 and run for 3 years. Once we reached the tentative agreement, the union membership voted on January 12th and ratified that agreement. As the speakers before me mentioned, throughout this negotiation process, one of the things that weighed heavily on our minds was recruitment and retention of officers. During the time that we were negotiating this contract, we were averaging about 45 or 46 vacancies in our sworn personnel. Those vacancies impact opportunities within the agency. Those numbers impact morale. The sergeant was completely accurate in his statement that the men and women of the Topeka Police Department have stepped up. They are working extra, covering shifts, but that wears on people. And at some point, we have to make some serious moves towards being competitive and attracting quality applicants to fill those ranks that we desperately need. Majority of the proposals during the contract negotiations were centered around financial topics. To go through a few of the other topics that management brought forward and the union brought forward, we cleaned up some language in the committees that are internal within the agency to add and have more accurate portrayal of the committees that were represented within the agency. We clarified a few items on the ability for management to split the workday for employees that are seeking training or further education, to clarify that those items were work-related. We clarified an increase in pay for holiday pay to get us in line with the other unions and across the board of the city. And then a few other basic language cleanups that were throughout the contract. When we moved to the financials, we discussed an increase in a shift differential. So currently, the officers at the agency who are working second or third shift hours received an additional 70 cents an hour in the current contract. we reached a tentative agreement to move that to an extra $1 an hour. One of the thought processes behind that is sometimes this allows for more senior officers to be attracted to some of those shifts other than first shift. So with that extra incentive, we may see a more even dispersal of seniority throughout the 3 shifts, specifically in patrol. We clarified our standby pay. This was a basic language cleanup to clarify which officers in the agency are eligible to be designated on a standby basis. For example, an investigator or detective who may be on a callback status. This language was able to allow us to more evenly offer that standby option to officers who are in that callback status. So basically, we cleaned the language up from officer to bargaining unit member. Leads us to the financial question or the wage package. We reached a tentative agreement on the 3-year contract of a first year 17% increase for the officers, year 2 a 5%, and year 3 a 5% increase. Looking at wage comparisons throughout this process, we compare to what we consider our competitors for our candidate pool. So we compare to agencies like the Kansas Highway Patrol, Lawrence Police Department, Overland Park, Kansas City, Missouri. And when we average the comparables for a first-year officer, that 17%, which seems like a large amount, and sitting here before you today, we admit that sounds like a very large amount. But when you average the wage study and you average the comparables, that 17% ask puts us basically flat with the average of our comparables for a year 1 officer. A year 5 officer, we're still behind, and a year 10 officer, we're about 8% behind the average of those comparables. So our union membership with that 17% was not asking to be the premier paid law enforcement agency in Kansas. They've asked to be year 1 basically flat. By year 5, they're a little behind, and by year 10, they're still behind. The 17% in year 1, that large amount also serves another purpose. As mentioned by the 2 sergeants, we're not only looking to bring officers in on the front end, those year 1 officers, and that 17% is enticing. Officers look at that dollar amount when they're shopping. We used to have a candidate pool, and for years we've had a candidate puddle. And I want to attract the largest candidate pool that I can, and then be able to choose the highest quality from that pool. And I can't get the highest quality without having numbers to choose from. 17% in year 1, we are optimistic is going to start to turn the corner there. We're going to start to attract more candidates. We're going to fill those seats in the academy, and we're going to overcome this manpower issue that not only Topeka Police Department's facing, but law enforcement's facing nationwide. 17% also serves another purpose. Our officers that are reaching the end of their careers,
And they have an option they have a decision, stay or retire. And a 17% year one increase certainly presents them with a dilemma, because they can elect to stay for an additional 3 years and maximize their retirement benefit with that 17%. And I've heard these conversations since that tentative agreement began, not just from one, but from many officers who are reaching that age where in our retirement system, like I said, they have that decision to make. Am I gonna go, or am I gonna stay for a few more years and maximize this? So the formula that I see in the benefit to this increase, which, as I said, gets us flat with our averages, we hope brings people in on the front end, and it stops people from leaving on the back end. And those are the two things that we need in this equation to turn the corner and overcome the manpower issue that we're facing. We overcome that manpower issue, we start to be able to increase the opportunities within the agency, decrease the wear on our officers, increase the morale of our officers. So that's the explanation that I offer for what on the surface seems like a large ask in year one. But I think it's a very common sense approach to getting us a competitive wage that's not an outrageous number when we're talking dollars and cents when we compare to the folks that we're competing with. And it keeps our people in-house, the people that we have invested so much time and effort in, and those people that have invested time and effort into our community. And with that, I will stand for questions that you may have.
Chief, thank you for taking the question. In the light of recent incidents, I really struggled with how I should vote tonight. In my mind, 17% is a lot. No matter if the officers are working overtime or what have you, I'm wondering where that puts us in cities that, and I'm not talking about Lawrence or Overland Park, because those people are rich anyway, not Lawrence, but certainly Overland Park people are better shape than we are. So I have some questions when you ask for the 17% and then 5 and then 5. And then you say that it's compatible with all the other bargaining units. I don't see that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Our comparables, when I talk about other bargaining units, our wage study, our comparables are with other law enforcement agencies in this region that we see, that we compete with. We see them as comparable size cities, comparable numbers in manpower or strength, but not necessarily other bargaining units within the city. Our comparables are based on a law enforcement agency comparison to other law enforcement agency comparisons within the city. So, for example, the current starting wage for a year one Topeka Police Department is about $53,000, and we are seeing comparables with the Kansas Highway Patrol starting at $68,000, Lawrence PD at $60,000, KCK right at $60,000, Kansas City, Missouri at $65,000, and then Overland Park is right on par with us at about $54,000.
Thank you, Interim. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Deputy Mayor. Okay. Other questions for the chief? Councilman Miller?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to comment that I believe it's important for people to understand that with a shortage that we have, along with the mix of the low wages, Throughout my years, especially as a black man, I've had different interactions with officers, not just with TPD, with other places, accidentally watching others interact with them. And I can tell you that it is always better to have an officer who is not overworked, who is paid well enough in their job to compare to their colleagues, so that their family is taken care of, they are taken care of, and in every interaction that they have with citizens is a sound mind. I think that's extremely important. And although a lot of officers do not get in this for financial reasons, that piece of it has to be safe and secure for them to be able to feel comfortable. And I don't care who you are. If you've never been an officer, you don't understand the stressful situation that they go through. I would like to take this piece off of their brains. Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Deputy Mayor?
So I don't have a question, but I do have comment. So I
Okay.
can do it now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So there are a couple of, well, several things I want to say on this, and I'm going to read it just so I can keep my train of thought right. And this is due to research that I've been doing along with, and it's no surprise to anybody, I work with activists and advocates in the community, and I have since I was first elected to office. So for a city, and my comments are going to be as far as this FOP contract and TPD overall. For a city of 125,000 residents, the best practice for the number of police officers per 1,000 people varies slightly depending on the specific needs and crime rates of the city. Generally, the average range is between 1.8 to 2.5 officers per 1,000 inhabitants. For Topeka, Kansas, the recommended, and these comes from the FBI Uniform Crime Reporting, for Topeka, Kansas, the recommended range aligns closely with this average, with 2.0 officers per 1,000 residents being a typical benchmark in this Midwest area. This means that Topeka should ideally have about 200 police officers. This means in full. This means officers, majors, sergeants, everything of that nature, and we're already over that, for a population of 125,000 to ensure adequate law enforcement presence and community safety. I'm stating, once again, we seriously need to reimagine and re-envision, along with needed efficiencies, our Topeka Police Department. Rather than putting the burden of mental health calls on their shoulders and the close to $500,000 per year that goes into their budget under the Behavioral Health Unit in the CIT unit, we need to consider hiring a third-party contracting or hiring the professionals for mental health. That means white mental health professionals, black mental health professionals, and brown mental health professionals. This will place less stress on Topeka police officers in a realm they are not adequately trained for, nor should they have to pick up the pieces in this broken mental health system we are trying to come to terms with and find answers to. We also need to find groups outside of the police department that have a serious and proven track record and methodology of helping reduce crime. And I am excited, I am curious to find out when we have some folks from Cities United coming in here, which have a proven track record, to see how they can help us within neighborhoods where neighbors actually take up ways that are proactive to help reduce crime in their own neighborhoods. I believe that we need a serious review of efficiencies, time spent with, that means time studies, looking at various positions of those that may not actually be on the street. We need better deployment. And we have a little over 40 sergeants on staff at Topeka PD. Their combined pay is over $2 million. We have 4 majors, and their pay tops out at $500,000. All of this is annual amounts, and I got this from finance. And we have 14 lieutenants with their combined annual pay of over $1.5 million. I've heard repeatedly over the past several years that the Topeka Police Department is top-heavy, And I'm being very vocal on this because I think our new chief of police needs to take a serious look at this. The budget woes, which we are going to hear more about tonight and that are going to be with us for the several years to come, we need to keep in mind that this is a shared burden for all of us, and we must start looking at the efficiencies more than how much can be made with continued advancement. We must look stridently at performance measures, moving past a mindset that there is no need for an individual officer to not meet expectations on annual evaluations by our police officers, when if anywhere across our city meets expectations should be a priority for our police officers because of the responsibility of the job that they have. And I want to be very clear as well, is that I see many, many fine officers out on the streets of Topeka. Many fine officers, men and women with the Topeka Police Department. And I will say it once again, how much my district appreciates and depends on the community police officers. We need more community police officers deeply involved in our neighborhoods, working hand in hand with neighborhood groups. And so there has also been comments that this is still about defunding the police. And I say that vibe doesn't even exist in this realm, or at least what I know of within this governing body. I would challenge that statement because there is a lot of support for law enforcement. Well, what I will continue to work on with community, with activists and advocates, is for the needed training of police and the injustices that have occurred at times with police towards community. There is still work to be done for more transparency within the police department, along with our continued dialogue that is still ongoing with the Department of Justice over concerns with the Topeka Police Departments. All of these efforts are about making Topeka the best it can be, and those that work for the city of Topeka the best they can be. The shortages that we continue to hear of within the police department are also realities within the realms of social work, firefighters, teachers, manufacturing workers, and the list could go on. And I am deeply heartened by the changes that we were able to get with the contract. And there's one more thing I want to add, because with this increase that we are seeing over the next 3 years, according to what finance is giving me, we will be a little over 43% on law enforcement for the city of Topeka as part of the general fund. And that's in the 3rd year. If you look, and this is on costofpolicing.org, the 10 largest cities in the country spend a lesser percentage, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of those out of 10 at this point will be spending less on their policing than what we do. Those are the 10 largest cities in the country. So again, we need to reimagine, we need to rethink what we are doing. And so with all that said, I'm going to support this. But I also want to say at the same time that I'm going to be working aggressively to get some answers to some of these challenges that I think we're being met with. Thank you.
Councilman Kell.
Well, I think you kind of hit one point there is the new chief of police. And that's one thing that this will do by helping get people staffed. We'll be able to attract a better quality of chief of police when they look at our department and say, we have this percentage and we're paying this amount, we're being competitive. Where if they don't look at it and say, well, we're not competitive, so let me try to find someone else, it'll be a little bit, not much of a headache of his job. I do agree with you on the looking at different aspects of the department, trying to community outreach being a big thing that I've been wanting to do for years. But the biggest thing I think I want to do is when we do get that new chief of police, it's going to be a recruiting thing and just get out there and recruit as hard as we can, get staffed as much as we can, because no matter if you're vocal about the police, positive or negative, when you want them, you want them there as quickly as possible. So we've had situations where we had lag times between calls because we're so short-staffed. And I've called in myself over situations and stood there for 45 minutes watching the situation And it's just one of those things that we need to get our staffing up. And that will help us in so many different aspects of the city. And then we can work on that training aspect of being a good ambassador between the police department and the city. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Duncan.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple things. Obviously, anytime we talk to citizens, they want us to support our police department, rightfully so. We need to. Public safety is one of our core functions and priorities. That comes with a big price tag these days. It does. And I hope the citizens understand that as we get into our budget talk and they wonder why we've had a big budget increase in terms of salaries and wages, this is it. It's this contract, folks. And that's okay. But citizens need to understand this stuff doesn't come free, and we have to make those tough decisions as we move forward. And I also hope, and I know they will, that the members of the FOP understand what that significant is as they go out in the community and have those discussions with community members about why we have to make some of these decisions. It's because we want to support them and we want to provide the best public safety we can. I struggled with the numbers like everybody else. I think since I've been here, whether it's union members or even a year and a half ago when it was non-union members, we look at the comparables, cities our size, and we look to where we are in that matrix. And this percentage increase is big because it wasn't the cities that are large in this community, in this state that bother me. Wichita has a larger tax base. Kansas City has a larger tax base. But we're behind Lawrence and Manhattan, communities half our size, paying more. Why would you not go want to work for a city half the size for more money? So this was about us staying comparable and competitive with those other even smaller cities and making sure we were setting that expectation that if you come here, we're going to pay you the market rate. And sadly, that's 17% in year one and 5% the next 2 years. But I do believe we worked hard to make sure that those rates were exactly where they needed to be and nothing more, to make sure that we were listening to what the department was telling us in terms of wages and listening to what the market was telling us we needed to do as the capital city to stay competitive, retain, and recruit new officers. So that's why I can support this wages, even though now we will be pulling our hair out as we go through the budget process, trying to make those differences and offsets as we work through it. I want to make 2 points, though, about the other things in this contract that I don't think should be overlooked, even though the focus I get is on the wage piece. 2 things I want to highlight are, we tried to get this the last contract, and we're not all the way there, but there is now a provision in this contract that says, once we finally get to an evaluation we can agree on, they have to meet expectations. That's a step we haven't had before, and now it means all we've got to do is get to that evaluation, and that piece is already agreed to, and that's an important step. And I think I'm thankful to the FOP for finally accepting that. I know we got a lot of work to do on that, but that should not be overlooked. The other change I want to highlight was brought to us by Councilwoman Valdivia-Alcala, and it's one word and it's small, but there's a disciplinary provision that was changed from may to shall. It's one word, but it's a big word, and it's an important one in the legal world, and so I appreciate that change also. So I don't want to overlook that there are also some things in this that others beyond wages have asked us in the community to make sure we include, and some of those are in here. So I thank you for the work done on that, for the council members who brought those forward. And so for those reasons, despite my same consternation as to what the budget impact is going to be, I will vote to support this evening. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you. I too have struggled with this, and I do realize the importance. And 2 weeks ago, I had 2 officers that tell me they were going to Lawrence. I asked them, was it the wages? And they said no. What I want the FOP and Chief, what I want you to do is to go back and remind our officers and remind them this is a decision that we did not take lightly. And in doing that, we expect the best out of them. We expect them to respect our citizens, no matter who they are, no matter where they fall, no matter what category they're in, from the homeless to the rich. And we expect them to respect each other. And I tell you what, if I have 2 more officers come to me and say, we're not respecting each other, why would we want to work for that? I will make it a point to come back and pull this contract and try to change those numbers. because that's where it begins. They have to realize everybody does want public health and safety. Everybody does want respect. Everybody does want to know that you guys are going to be there. I struggle with these numbers because I know we will never be fully staffed. That's just me. I've been on a while and I've never seen that. I see us retire, I see them come and go. But until we can build that better bond, and it starts at the top. And I'm not, and you know, I love you to death, but I have to say that. I have to say that. It starts at the top with respecting everybody. And until we have that, nobody's gonna wanna come here and work. Nobody. So I struggle with this. I think I can support it, but I also know I can go back in and open it, you know? So that's my guarantee. To have a better force. I think we've got some good officers, and I think we've got some officers that we need to lead and guide. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Miller.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to second the thought that yes, the culture, there has to be an adjustment. I know that we'll most likely get that with the new police chief, but the culture has to make an adjustment. The money's there now. I'm going to support this to make sure the money is there, but we have to make sure that with those funds comes the expectations that we must do what's best for our citizens, and we must do what's best for our staff, in a sense that just what Councilman was talking about when it comes to respect for each other, when it comes from management, having good communication. I have heard that we are top heavy as well. Those things can be fixed if it makes sure that everybody has some unity. I won't speak on the conversations I had with a couple officers, but I second what Councilwoman Perez.
Further comment? If I may, thank you, Chief, for the presentation, and thank you for you and your staff working so closely with city staff in coming to this contract that's before us. People like to say that they support the police. That's patriotic, right? But when it comes right down to it, do they respect the police? Everybody wants to hear that the officers respect the citizens, but it's a two-way street. I've worked in law enforcement a total of 45 years. And at every opportunity that I've worked, that was keyed to what I did and how I saw the agencies perform their jobs. I don't want us to get the idea, at least not for me, that the more money I give you, the better chief of police or better police officer I get. I don't think money's at that root. I think it's whether or not you have a good character. And I think what we do at the front end to attract people of good character who want this job for what it means and how it is essential to a successful community, that's how I think we will make changes in a positive way. We can get into a money race and we'll never win because we don't have the population to support some of the other communities that have a bigger population and tax base. I do agree with the comments that were made about respect. You have to respect what you're doing. You come to that job for a purpose, and you have to remind yourself of that. And leadership is important, but I do remember a lot of the stuff that I saw that actually took hold came from the ground level. Those sergeants who take that message and make sure that that message is carried through and not just a bunch of words and a bunch of data and statistics. That is where you really see the change happen in how officers interact with the community. So I will support this, not because of the money or anything that's been said in here, because I know the need for a community to feel safe. I hear it all the time. We need more officers. And with that, is the assumption that we're doing everything we can to make sure the officers that we do have are trained as well as they can be trained. You and I had a conversation about some of that, and there's every effort being done. Sure, there are things that can be brought to us that we have not thought of, and I think it's important for us to consider those things. But let's not get in a hurry to say that traditionally we haven't been serving this community. I respect the officers who do put the community first and not their paycheck. And that's what I want to make sure that everybody understands, at least for me, when I vote yes for this. That's where I'm coming from. So thank you again, Chief.
Thank you.
We have, City Manager, have anything further?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So this is an action item. The chair will entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilman Duncan. Second by Councilwoman Ortiz. If you will take the roll call, please.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
Yes.
Ortiz, Banks,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
and Hofer.
Yes.
All right, we have 10 yes, the motion carries.
Thank you again. We'll move on now to action item 4B, if the clerk will read.
B is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Dr. Robert Perez concerning accessory dwelling units, amending sections 1855-010 and 040, 1860-010, and 18-225-010 of the Topeka Municipal Code and repealing original sections.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the governing body, Dan Warner, our Planning Division Director, will take us through this item.
Hello, Dan.
Good evening, Mayor. Governing body, with me tonight is Mike Hall, Randy's planning manager in our division, just in case there's some questions I can't handle on either of these two items. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first one we're going to talk about is accessory dwelling units. This is a text amendment that I will explain in a relatively short presentation. So what is an accessory dwelling unit or an ADU? So it's also known as a carriage house, a garlo, a mother-in-law suite, granny flat. Kind of most importantly for this discussion, it's a smaller independent residential dwelling located on the same lot as a standalone single-family home. So the city's zoning code permits accessory dwelling units in certain multifamily and mixed-use zoning districts. What we're talking about here is making accessory dwelling units permitted in single-family zoning districts. So why ADUs? So there's a potential to increase housing affordability and also provide a wider range of housing options. So the process that we've used to date, we released a public survey on accessory dwelling units in the fall of '22. We convened a work group to help us gather some input on the draft standards. We held a series of neighborhood meetings earlier this year, so we met twice with the Citizens Advisory Council, College Hill neighborhood, Tennessee Town neighborhood. These were all well-attended meetings, many good questions. We presented at the Topeka Home Builders annual meeting. That was very well-attended and a lot of good questions at that as well. Planning Commission had a discussion item for this text amendment at their April and May meetings, had a public hearing in June, and recommended approval. So the issue with the ADU and how we're proposing is that if you can meet certain standards with your permit, you'll be approved administratively. If you can't meet the standards, then there's a possibility for a conditional use permit, which is a sort of a rezoning process. But if you can meet the standards, it can be approved administratively. So before we put our standards together, we obviously researched other communities, tried to find what we could pull from them that might work here in Topeka. And what I can say is most of the towns around us have ADUs on the books. This isn't really a new idea. And then we also tested the standards with house size and lot size to see how they fit. So standards real quickly, we have size limitations on the ADUs. We have an owner occupancy requirement for one of the two units. There's design guidelines and also requiring a single additional off-street parking stall. One thing that came up with one of the neighborhood meetings was this idea that the city would notify neighborhoods when permits are received for accessory dwelling units. Staff provided the Planning Commission a document with certain options regarding that and for them to consider. They did talk about that. Ultimately, the commission did not include a notification requirement in their recommendation for approval. With that, I will be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions for Mr. Warner? Anybody online? Can't see. Okay, Councilwoman Hiller.
Don't have any questions, but I personally want to thank all the work that's been done by the planning staff as well as the planning commission on this. What you just got in a pass around was a small technical amendment to add, which has been the staff. I raised the issue, but they got it all prepared. The amendment that you have before you simply adds a reference to two different parts of the zoning code that talk about how much of the lot you can cover with buildings. And so it's there because we want to make sure that when somebody's considering doing an ADU, that direction for where to look to see whether it would really be possible on their property is right there. So when it's the right time, and if that's now, I would propose the amendment. If you want to, I don't know how you want to do that, have the amendment first or propose the adoption of the ordinance itself. So,
First, you would need a motion to adopt the ordinance, and then you would make a motion to amend the ordinance.
well, I would move to approve if there is an other conversation.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Duncan. Did you, I do want to give Dan an opportunity to.
Explain that.
yeah.
That's fine, please.
So what Councilwoman Hiller is referencing is within the ordinance currently, there is a statement that says accessory dwelling units must meet building code and also the density and dimensional standards of the zoning code. So it's sort of a general statement. The suggestion is to provide a little more specificity to what sections, code sections, and yeah, that's fine. I mean, that's perfectly reasonable and really not a huge change to the ordinance.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. We'll vote on this ordinance
No.
first.
No.
Take
No.
your motion.
I think she would like to make a motion to amend the ordinance.
To include
now.
that?
Right. So
Okay.
I would follow with the motion to make the amendment as stated in the handout.
Second.
Yeah, seconded by Councilman Duncan. Okay. Brenda, if you'll read the motion, make sure
The
that,
motion is to amend line 1094 and 1095 of the ordinance to strike the words "of the zoning district shall apply" and replace the words within 1860-020 and 18230 of the zoning code. The sentence would read as follows: 9 ADUs shall comply with applicable building codes and dimensional standards in 1860-020 and 18230 of the zoning code unless stated otherwise in these standards.
okay. You all understand what you're voting on? We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Council members Valdivia Akla,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Banks,
Yes.
Kale,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
and Councilmember Hiller.
Yes.
All right, we have 10 yes, the amendment carries.
Move to action item 4C.
No, we need to do the ordinance.
Oh, okay, sorry. Now we'll move to a motion for the amendment.
Yeah, adopt the ordinance as
the ord-
amended,
yeah.
yes. All right,
Okay.
Councilmembers Ortiz,
Yes.
Banks,
Yes.
Kale,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
and Valdivia Aqua.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, the motion carries.
Okay. Move to action item 4C. If you'll read, Brenda.
C is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Dr. Robert Perez, amending the district map referred to and made a part of the zoning ordinances by Section 1850050 of the Topeka Municipal Code on property located at 1220 Southwest Executive Drive, rezoning from O&I to Office and Institutional District to PUD Planned Unit Development District with O&I to Office and Institutional uses with limited C2 commercial uses including body art, servicing, tattooing, body piercing, and coffee shop cafe.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you. Mayor, members of the governing body, Dan Warner, Planning Division Director, will take us through this.
Thank you, City Manager. Mayor, governing body, the applicant intends to convert the existing office building on the site for commercial uses, so retail uses such as a coffee shop, tattoo parlor. The rezoning is necessary because the existing office zoning on the property doesn't support commercial uses. So if approved, the rezoning will allow a limited amount of C2 uses such as body art, service tattooing, body piercing, and coffee shop, in addition to office uses. So it retains the office zoning and adds a couple uses that are part of the C2 zoning district. The applicant held a neighborhood information meeting, and there were concerns raised at that meeting about the project. The staff report and conditions of approval that are noted in the ordinance address those concerns. Planning Commission unanimously approved the PUD zoning at their June meeting, and staff recommends approval as well. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Dan? Okay, before we vote on this particular item requires any ex parte communications to be revealed to the governing body, so I need to read this admonishment. Ex parte communication is required prior to proceeding with the vote. Each member of the governing body who has engaged in ex parte communication with any individual, either in favor of or against the matter being considered, must state that the communication occurred and indicate that even in light of having engaged in the communication, they were able to fairly, objectively, and impartially consider the measure based only upon the evidence provided on the record. The record includes the Planning Commission minutes, the staff report and its attachments, the public comments made during Planning Commission, and similar relevant information related to the matter. So I'm asking members of the governing body, is there any ex parte communication to bring forth?
Mayor.
Councilman Dobler.
Yes, I did have a quick conversation with the owner of one of the buildings adjacent to this. That was well before the Planning Commission hearing, and I haven't heard anything since, and I can make an impartial decision. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, you've heard this item. Is there a motion to entertain?
I move for approval.
Motion to approve by Councilwoman Hofer, seconded by Councilman Kell. If you call the roll call, please.
Councilmembers Banks,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
and Ortiz.
Yes.
All right, we have 10 yes, motion carries.
Okay. We will now move to action item D. Madam Clerk.
D is an ordinance introduced by Deputy Mayor Christina Valdivia Akala concerning trees and mobile home parks, creating a new sub-article in Chapter 14.65 of the Topeka Municipal Code.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, members of the governing body, Deputy Mayor Valdivia Akala will take us through this item.
Okay.
Thank you. We've already had this in discussion mode, and I think that we know that this has been an ongoing issue with this particular mobile home park for at least a year. But to me, what this ordinance does is it expands it. We talked about with John Chardine, Director Chardine, last week about how complaints or concerns would be handled. I do not see that there's going to be an inordinate cost to this, and I also believe that we can actually add this as part of that extension of what we are doing with changing our culture of property maintenance, where we as a city are becoming more proactive to get possible difficult LLCs in line to provide that safe residency, that safe housing, and in this case, it would be, the land that these mobile home parks are on. And for that to have more needed scrutiny when these type of calls arise. So unless there's other questions or concerns, I would move to approve.
Okay. Motion to approve, is there a second? Second by Councilman Banks. If you call the roll, please.
Councilmembers Kell,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
and Banks.
Yes.
All right, we have 9 yes, the motion carries.
Okay. Move to action item E. Madam Clerk?
E is an ordinance granting the Kansas Gas Service, a division of One Gas Incorporated, and its successors and assigns a natural gas franchise, prescribing the terms thereof and relating thereto, providing definitions of terms, prescribing a franchise fee, providing terms and conditions for the use of public right-of-ways, requiring advance notice of work and duty to repair, providing indemnification and hold harmless agreement, providing for rules and regulations, prescribing insurance requirements, reserving certain rights, providing for revocation and termination, providing for acceptance of the terms of the franchise, providing for a reopener, providing for notice of annexations, prescribing relevant governing law, providing for transfer and assignment of the franchise, providing for points of contact and notifications, providing for an agreement for renegotiate, repealing of all ordinances or parts of ordinances inconsistent with or in conflict with the terms thereof.
Mr. City Manager?
Thank you. Mayor, members of the governing body, Amanda Stanley, our city attorney, will take us through this item.
Yes, I am happy to stand for questions on this topic. We discussed it at the last governing body meeting. This is a 20-year contract with options for reopeners at 5-year intervals. It does continue the 5% franchise that was in place under our last contract. That is pretty standard across the region. A 20-year contract is also very standard, as that is the maximum amount allowed in law, and gas companies and everyone else like to negotiate the most that you can get. The Public Works Director, the Planning Director, as well as the Utility Director have all reviewed this contract and said that they work well with our partners at Kansas Gas in the right-of-way, and all of the provisions that they need are in here. So the staff would recommend approval.
Okay. Any questions for the city attorney? Is there a motion to entertain?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilman Duncan. I'll second the motion. Okay, if you'll call the roll, please.
Councilmembers Miller,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Banks,
Yes.
and Kell.
Yes.
All right, we have 10 yes, motion carries.
Move to action item 4F, if the clerk will read.
F is a resolution introduced by the Public Infrastructure Committee comprised of Councilmembers Sylvia Ortiz, David Banks, and Neil Dobler, amending the 2025 to 2034 CIP and 2025 to 2027 CIB to include project numbers 291058, 291110, 291061, and 291144, and to modify project numbers 291131, 291132, and 291192.
Mr. City Manager?
Thank you. Mayor, and members of the governing body, Nicole Mallett, our Utilities Deputy Director, will take us through this item.
Go.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council.
No, I'm on.
Good evening. This CIP amendment is for 4 projects. It is the Shunga pump stations and Grant Jefferson pump stations, as well as the associated force mains with them. Involves a total of $52 million in projects, but funding was moved from the programs to the specific projects as it's intended in the CIP so that we can budget for these. So there is a net zero impact to the CIP, no additional funding required. This resolution was in front of the Public Infrastructure Committee on July 16th, and they have recommended it for approval. And other than that, I can stand for any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Nicole. Anybody from the committee want to make comment? Motion move to approve by Councilwoman Ortiz, second by Councilman Banks. If you call the roll, please.
Councilmembers Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Banks,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
and Miller.
Yes.
All right, we have 10 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. Action item G. Madam Clerk.
G is a resolution introduced by Public Infrastructure Committee comprised of Councilmembers Sylvia Ortiz, David Banks, and Neil Dobler, recommending approval of project numbers 291105 Phase 1 and 291144 for the Grant Jefferson Force Main Rehabilitation and/or replacement as further described in Exhibit A.
City Manager.
Thank you. Mayor and members of the governing body, Nicole Mallett, Utilities Deputy Director, will take us through this one as well.
Hello again.
Hello.
I'm not sure I have much to add. This is the final approval for projects over $250,000 within the CIP that are construction ready, and we are excited that we are construction ready. So we asked, again, it was in front of the Public Infrastructure Committee, and they have recommended approval.
Okay. Thank you. Motion from the committee. Motion to approve by Councilwoman Ortiz and second by Councilman Banks. If you'll call the roll, please.
Councilmembers Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes, this is for Grant Jefferson, correct?
Force main.
Banks,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
and Dobler.
Yes.
All right, we have 10 yes, the motion carries.
Move on to action item H. Madam Clerk.
H is a resolution introduced by Public Infrastructure Committee comprised of Councilmembers Sylvia Ortiz, David Banks, and Neil Dobler, recommending approval of project number 291061 for the Grant Jefferson Pump Station rehabilitation and/or replacement as further described in Exhibit A.
City Manager.
Thank you. Mayor and members of the governing body, Nicole Mallett, Utilities Deputy Director, will take us through this item.
You're dominating right now, Nicole.
No worries. Yes, I'm still here. This one is for the Grant Jefferson Pump Station. Same thing. I know people are really excited about that one. Again, in front of the Public Infrastructure Committee, and they have recommended approval.
Thank you. Anybody from the committee?
So moved.
Motion to approve by Councilwoman Ortiz. The second.
Second.
Who was that? Was that Nita? Second by Councilman Dobler. If you call the roll, please. Oh,
Is there a moment for a comment?
sure.
Thank you. This is not pointing fingers at anybody at this time. I am delighted to see these coming together at a zero cost, even with all the inflation that we've had and all that we've seen happen with projects that we had planned in the past. I'd like to just make a request across the bow with city manager here, moving into these sorts of things. I think we never know what the net is going to be on each of these projects. If there could be a routine that we always get what the original scope and the original cost was, plus the revised scope and the revised cost of each. If we always had that, then this one, again, netted out just fine, but that would allow us, at kind of a short glance, to have a look at any of these projects that come forward. So that's just a request in general. Thank you.
Okay. Have a motion and a second. If you call the roll, please.
Okay, we got Councilmembers Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Banks,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
and Duncan.
Yes.
All right, we have 10 yes, the motion carries.
We'll move to action item I. Madam Clerk.
I is a resolution introduced by Public Infrastructure Committee comprised of Councilmembers Sylvia Ortiz, David Banks, and Al Dobler, recommending approval of project numbers 291105 Phase 2 and 291110 for Shunga Force Main Rehabilitation and Replacement as further described in Exhibit A.
City Manager.
Thank you. Mayor, members of the governing body, Nicole Malat, Utilities Deputy Director, will take us through this item.
All right, this one is for the Shunga Force Main, again, part of the CIP amendment we just did in front of the Public Infrastructure Committee on the 16th, and they have recommended approval.
Motion to approve by Councilwoman Ortiz. Second? Second by Councilman Kell. To call the roll, please.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Banks,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Miller, Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
and Hofer.
Yes.
All right, we have 10 yes, motion carries.
Okay. We'll move on to action item J.
J is a resolution introduced by Public Infrastructure Committee comprised of Councilmembers Sylvia Ortiz, David Banks, and Neil Dobler, recommending approval of project number 291058 for the Shunga Pump Station Rehabilitation and/or Replacement.
City Manager. Nicole.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the governing body, Nicole Malat, our Utilities Deputy Director, will take us through this one as well.
All right, last but not least, Shunga Pump Station, again, part of the CIP amendment we just completed in front of the Public Infrastructure Committee and recommended for approval.
Okay. Thank you. Motion to approve by Councilwoman Ortiz. Second by, you have a comment?
If I may.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say, Nicole, you did a great job. Seriously, in the committee, you did a great job explaining everything to us. You still got it, so keep up the good work. But I just wanted to tell you that.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Okay, the motion to approve by Councilwoman Ortiz, a second by Councilman Banks. If you call the roll, please.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Banks,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
and Mayor Padilla.
Yes.
All right, we have 10 yes, motion carries.
Okay, move on to action item K. Madam Clerk.
K is approval of the 2025 Social Services Grant Allocation Recommendations in the amount of $493,810.
City Manager.
Thank you, members of the governing body, council members Dobler, and Housing Assistant Director Higgins will take us through this item.
Okay.
Mayor, I'm having some trouble with my internet here. I might ask Councilwoman Ortiz to cover this, if she would, please.
You asking me to be the chair again?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Thank you, City Manager. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Please.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Brett so he can thoroughly explain this, because he can explain it a lot better than I can, even though we went through the process. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mayor, Governing Body, City Manager. What you have before you are the recommendations from the Social Services Grant Committee as a result of the process that began in the spring. What you have are listed the grantees as they are listed by numbers, and you have the amount requested, their score, and then the amount recorded, or excuse me, the amount awarded. You'll see the total there, $493,810, and you will you'll note that that's a combination of the general funds and the CDBG as listed in the agenda. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Brett or for Carrie? Councilwoman Hiller.
Mayor, this is really awkward to me. I'm a social services person all along, but if I read the minutes and the documents correctly, this committee is asking us to add $1,810 to the allocation that was originally made by the council in the budget. And that would be applied as an award to an entity that scored only 21% on its scoring of the application. And I'm not sure we've ever funded an entity that scored less than about 60%. So I wasn't quite sure how that happened, or it seemed to have kind of slipped through, actually. So.
Happy to answer.
Go ahead.
Yeah, happy to answer. It didn't slip through.
Okay.
The chair made a motion to add the dollars back in based on what the original award amount was, based on taking the amount requested, multiplying it by the score, and then moving accordingly, as opposed to the subtracted amounts. We did have three appeals, and those appeals, two of those appeals were made, and as a result, there was a difference of $1,810. So that was subtracted from number 23, and the chair made a motion to add that back in, and then that's part of the final motion that was approved by the Social Services Grants Committee.
I've served on that committee for some years. It looks like what happened was we had a couple of fairly substantial awards last year, and those agencies didn't come back, which loosened up the pool. But each year, once the awards are done, the committee is tasked with looking at its guidelines and so on. We've set up guidelines that an entity shouldn't, with an idea that the awards wouldn't be less than $10,000. The reason the scoring is there is to make sure that it's a quality proposal that has experience in doing what they're doing, that has experience with meeting outcomes and an appropriately configured board of directors leading and supervising that, and that they've been meeting their program goals in the past. Clearly, a low score means that that did not happen with this organization. If this body chooses to go ahead and run it through, I certainly hope that the committee would clarify its standards and guidelines to set it up better for the committee next year. Because I know that this all along, when the council set up the system of outcomes-based funding, experience-based funding, and therefore scoring, that I was very surprised to see it.
Councilman Kell.
From firsthand experience, I love First Tee. I think it's a great organization out there that does a lot of good for our youngsters. And that's one thing that with our social service grants, we can work on our youngsters. Golf is a hard enough sport when you're an adult. Then you try to get kids doing it. My daughter went through it. She did 4 years of high school. She easily got a golf scholarship. There's so many golf scholarships that are just laying out there. This is an avenue to now help our kids go from picking up the clubs first time, learning the game, to eventually possibly now changing their life by being able to do something, go to college for it. And I just look at the big picture of this, and to me, just holding on to that money, just sitting there saying, oh, well, you didn't score high enough, you get nothing, it just kind of throws me off a little bit. I mean, because a lot of these organizations, we could nitpick at their scoring sheet and all this kind of stuff, and we could end up having a lot of money left over every year that could go to good. And to me, when it comes to trying to better our children, get them active, get them out of trouble, I look at an organization, it could be any organization when it comes to the youth, I'm gonna really push for it. And I have firsthand being on the board member, having a child go through this, and being out there every day during the summer, a couple summers ago, that this to me is an outstanding organization, especially for our youth.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I don't think that there's any question at all about the benefit of the group itself. Having been, I got to be honest, I just looked at it this evening. This lowest score for 3 years I was on there, and the work that was done, not only by the committee, but when we brought the Greater Topeka or United Way of Greater Topeka on board, all of that went through, and the training that was done with the agencies on the application process, that was a good 2-year process to work at an efficient method for outcomes, how to fill out the application, what all was needed, the paperwork. We decided initially, I didn't believe that we should go to a third-party contractor, but we did. And, Brett and his crew have been excellent. I'm just going to say, it doesn't matter to me who this is that is listed as number 23. What is very concerning is the 21%. And there is never money left over in these funds. Never. That's not the way this works. It's usually you're not going to end up getting the amount that you're awarded. I mean, we've had to put more money in over time. What this does, in my opinion, is it undoes everything that was trying to be built up for a rigorous process to see a 21%. I'm not the kind that's going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm going to vote for this, but I am just going to say that is very, very concerning. Nothing on the committee. That's not what this is about. What this is about was the methods that were in place for this scoring that were, again, worked vigorously for at least 2 years. So, thank you, Mayor.
Further comment? Councilwoman Ortiz?
I don't want to speak for Neil, but I think what he was thinking is it was just a low score, and so we would, vote to leave it on there, if my memory serves me right. And if you guys don't want it on there, we can take it off. But that's, if my memory serves me right, I think that's what it was. We did have 3 appeals. One, she did say that she didn't fill out the paperwork correctly. The process is in place, and so that was his motion. But we knew it was going to come before you guys, and we knew that if we want to take it out, we can, and we can move forward.
If I may, I too have served on that committee, and I know the struggles that, and the debate that goes back and forth, and why we went with the United Way. And you guys have done an excellent job, and I think, at least the governing body as a whole has every confidence that you're staying the course with your recommendations. If we're going to trust you for that, I guess we have to trust you for the recommendation if it was changed by the chair. But I too would be concerned that this doesn't become a repeated habit, because then we'll go back to what we were. And that was more difficult, I think, for the agencies that were coming to us, because they felt there was so much leeway and variances and appeals that it made it difficult. But I would support it, but I would echo the thoughts that we really, really look hard at that request. But I have confidence in the committee and the work that you have done. So thank you, Brett. Councilman Kell?
If no other comments, move to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilman Kell. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Banks. If you call the roll, please.
All right, council members Valdivia Acla,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Banks,
Yes.
Kale,
Yes.
Miller,
Abstain.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
No.
Hofer,
Yes.
and Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
and Councilmember Hiller.
Yes.
Okay, we have 8 yes with 1 abstention, Councilmember Miller, and 1 Councilmember Duncan voting no, so the motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Move to action item L. If the clerk will read, but we also have people who are signed up to speak to this issue. So I want the clerk to read, and then we'll have public comment, and then I'll move to you, City Manager. Madam Clerk?
L is a resolution introduced by council members Brett Kell, Marcus Miller, and Michelle Hofer, sitting as the Transient Guest Tax Committee to reallocate remaining transient guest tax funding from the Evel Knievel Museum to the Downtown Topeka Foundation Ice Rink, and a development agreement between the City of Topeka and Downtown Topeka Foundation specifying the rights and the responsibilities relating to the ice rink project.
Okay. As I indicated, I'm going to give the opportunity for those who have signed up to speak prior to us going into discussion. So I have Ty Dragoo. Do I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and members of the governing body. My name is Ty Dragoo. I'm here in the capacity of representing citizens in Shawnee County, Topeka in particular, that are advocating for a full-time ice rink in Topeka. We were really excited to see this on the news the other day. We've been following it closely. We just want to be in the room to advocate to you that as you go forward in this plan and monies are allocated towards this, if you decide to do this or not, it's key, in our opinion, to make sure that there is a full-time sheet of ice in the community and a standard rink size in the community. Definitely a step in the right direction. So we're not having negative comments about the concept of a donut or a circular rink, but many of the disadvantages was having that is it only limits you to one winter activity, and that's skating in one direction. If you get a full-size rink, we introduce curling, hockey, figure skating, para-ice sports, para-ice hockey. Also brings entertainment avenues. Think of Disney on Ice. Think of Polar Express, a Winter Village, things like that. KU, K-State, both have ice hockey programs in development. They are looking for places to play hockey. Topeka could be that avenue. They're looking for places to have curling. Right now, they travel to Kansas City, in some cases even further east. The possible programs that can come with a full-sized rink are ever expanding. With the singular design of what we keep hearing about the circle, you really are limiting yourselves to that. We did go through and look through the notes of the subcommittee meeting. Kurt Young had a discussion with the members of the governing body that were on the subcommittee, and one of the things I want to quote in there, and to the knowledge of the council members that were in their meeting, the question was asked, what does it look like if we go in and we see that the circle doesn't work and we're not getting what we need out of it? Would it be more expensive to then retrofit to a full-size rink? And the notes in that meeting showed that he responded, yes, it would be a lot more expensive to do it. So we're here in a position asking to advocate, one, for this, where you appreciate you looking at it and doing it. By no means take this as, hey, if you guys decide you're going to stick with the circle, we're upset. We're going in the right direction. We're just saying, let's do it right. Topeka does it right. You do it right. Be smart about this. Get that full sheet here. It's going to bring a lot of opportunities in. I had a suit and tie on before I was coming down here, and I thought, what better way to stand in front of you and show you the Topeka hockey jersey. I told my son, he plays hockey. He has to drive over to Kansas City three times a week when hockey's going on. Guys, this is my Jerry Maguire moment. Help me help you. I want to keep those tax dollars in Topeka. Right now, I'm giving them to the Hunt family. I don't want to do that. And there's a lot of people that feel the same way. So thank you for thinking about this. Thank you for advocating for it. We are a group that bleed hockey, and we'll do anything we can to be partners in this. And I don't think, I'm used to testifying to legislature. I don't know if in public forum you ask questions, but if you want to ask a question later, I'm available. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. When you were talking about entertainment, I just thought about me falling on the ice. That'd be good entertainment.
How much is it going to cost again?
Okay, we also have Laura Rolfe.
Hi, Council. My name is Devin, and I am a high school student at Topeka West, and I am here today to speak to you, council members, about having an ice rink in Topeka. I have struggled, my family has, like he has said, we have had to drive to Kansas City 3 times a week. Sometimes my family even has to drive twice. And there are kids like his age that have to drive even farther. And my family's been fighting for forever. I have wanted one. I know it's hard, I know it's expensive, but it will bring families, people, and a lot of things to this city. I just really hope this goes through. I have struggled, and it is hard. I understand it's expensive. I really hope this happens. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. City Manager, action item L.
Thank you. Mayor and members of the governing body, I'll ask Councilmember Hofer to take us through this item.
And I am going to defer for our presentation to Kurt Young. So please come up.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Cal.
Can we maybe refer to this as a full sheet of ice versus like a donut or a ring? Because I don't want it to get confusing for people. So if we're going with the circular style.
I can answer that question
Okay.
right up front.
All right.
It's not a donut.
Okay.
Okay? Everything I'm going to talk about is not a donut.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Kurt, go
Am I
ahead.
on here?
If the green light is on, you're on.
Green light is on. Okay. So, thank you, and I recognize some faces back here because for many years, when I still owned the hotel out on the south end of town, I was a sponsor of hockey at the Expo Center. I say Expo Center, Event Center. So, I recognize some faces back here, so. Let me give you just a little bit of history, thank you, as to how this has evolved. If you think back to the winter of 2022 and 2023, that was our first attempt to put ice on the Evergy Plaza. And not knowing, not having any knowledge of how it was going to work, what the reaction and reception was going to be, we chose to go in with a leased piece of equipment, or lease all of the equipment. And we went into that leasing a fairly small facility, and we learned a lot from that experience. We learned, about when's the best time of day to be skating. We learned about the reaction that the community had to the ice. We just learned a lot. But one of the key things that we learned that there really is an appetite and a market for ice rink in Topeka. We had over 10,000 people come down to skate in that, I believe it was 2.5 month time frame that we had ice down there. The unfortunate thing out of that experience was that we lost a boatload of money. I say a boatload, it's a boatload by my pocketbook. It may not be for some others, but it was an expensive venture and we did lose money. So when we started this earlier this year, one of the things that's happened since then is there's been constant questions. When are we going to have ice back? When are we going to have a rink back on the plaza so we can come and skate? So we know that there's a level of enthusiasm for it and support for it. So the Downtown Topeka Foundation Board started early this year having discussions about how could we put ice on the plaza in a permanent environment and make money or at least break even on the whole venture. So we started looking really at buying the ice equipment as opposed to leasing it and renting it. And what we found out, we have been working with a contractor now. Well, let me back up just a little bit. Can
we advance it 2 slides?
Yeah. Does this advance it? Here, you advance it.
Is this it? Oh, sweet. Thank
There.
you.
This is the financial
And I can talk about this.
actuals.
Yeah, so the main thing is if we put on ice again, I would expect similar attendance numbers, if not hopefully a little bit improved, as we continue to build, the public's knowledge that this would be a facility available downtown. But the main thing here is that equipment rental and setup line that's indicated there is just too substantial really for for all of these costs to really ever be absorbed by the revenues that are made by it every year. And so that was the one line that we really saw as an opportunity to attack that and see how can we drive that equipment rental and setup down. And that was really pointed us in a very quick direction to we just need to purchase this equipment. If we own this, basically for the cost of leasing it for 2, maybe 3 years, you can own that equipment that can last for 10 to 20 years. And so also as part of what we learned from that first time was, hey, was that honestly the best setup where we had it? And if you see that green oval that is in the middle of the plaza there, that was where it was originally set up, but there was substantial costs associated with setting it up there because with the fountains that are in the middle of the plaza, there's actually a foot drop in elevation from the center to the edge of the plaza to make so all the water runs to the center, so it refills that pool and the fountains operate. But you have to have dead level surface for an ice rink. And so that meant a whole temporary base had to be constructed to bring it all level, had to be torn down at the end of the season. So all things that are adding into really that setup cost that we were looking at every year. And so that's why we identified that really having it built into the plaza isn't going to be an option that's, feasible financially. So that's why we were looking at putting it in where the green rectangle is on the left there in the lawn that the Downtown Topeka Foundation owns to the north of the plaza. Because then that can be graded level, so that way we don't have to do all that work every year. We do it once and then eventually pour in a concrete foundation to where it's pretty much ready to go every season. So anything you want to add to that?
No, you covered it well. So where we are right now is that we've chosen to move it off the deck of the plaza, put it in the grass area. It would be in year 2 become a permanent rink. And I say year 2 because we've evolved far enough into 2024 that we can't get the dirt work done and get the concrete poured to have ice in there this year. So what we're actually looking at is the same company that we've been dealing with and getting all of the pricing for this is in a position to making the first year, this year, if we can get this ball rolling quick enough on a temporary surface, but it would be on the north end on the grass where you see this picture today. Then after this year, then we would remove that temporary surface, come back in, do the final grading, pour a permanent surface. And as Ty mentioned earlier, the things that you can do beyond having ice in the wintertime are just immeasurable. I mean, we've had people talking about things that we could do on that ice, and some of them are quite unique, but that slab of concrete, would really become a multi-purpose surface when it does not have ice on it. So we're excited about the opportunity. I'll let Don talk about these numbers a little bit and put them in perspective.
Yeah, and just to be clear, these are hard numbers. We've met with contractors and found subs that are specific to building these kinds of facilities and ice rinks. So there is quite a bit in that, purchase of the chillers, dasher boards, and ice mats that are necessary for the ice rink. And then there's a lot in permanent site work, and like I was explaining with grading that grass lawn surface flat, there is electrical that is involved with making sure those chillers can get the necessary power to cool where the ice would be. And it is also a much more substantial cooling package than the original year too. So some of our takeaways from that were that, hey, if we want to have an extended, longer season, we need more cooling, and that's what those chillers would provide. And then getting bids for ice skates, and we do have some allowances in there for some of the smaller items like, a ticket booth and things. But anyways, total outlay for making ice happen this year is $585,000, of which the transient guest tax allocation would be a great first step towards getting accomplished. And then on that next column in the 2025 ice rink, that's where we finally get that permanent concrete base poured that has embedded glycol lines in it, so that way it's basically just turnkey every year. We just set up dasher boards, fill it with water, freeze it, it's ready to go. So going back to that funding source, I was talking about the transient guest tax. We've been looking at it as about $178,000. That's kind of the first money in, and often in projects like this, the first money is the biggest piece because it gets that momentum going to where some of the conversations we've already been having with community partners that may want to be the title sponsor of this ice for long term can then see that, hey, their money's going to push us across the finish line to make it happen. It's not waiting on anybody else in order for ice to happen this year and going forward long term. So, and then we do have $200,000 that will still be out there. We've looked at a few things that we think may be good sources for that. We haven't disclosed any of those yet, but that final $200,000 needed for pouring that concrete is something we will also be working on attaining. But that has no bearing on ice happening this year. That $200,000 is to get that permanent concrete in that makes this a 20-year commitment to having ice downtown. With the $578,000 between the sources 1 and 2, that is making ice happen this year, and probably even up to about 10 years, even if we had to do it on a temporary basis. A little more setup cost and labor every year, but would still make sense.
For about as long as we've been working with a contractor and these are actual cost numbers that you're looking at. I mean, I've got a contractor, the contractor that prepared this for us and got these numbers, he's ready to go. But for about the same amount of time that we've been working with him getting these numbers and the whole evolution of this from a donut to a solid sheet of ice, we've been talking to one corporate sponsor, and those discussions are ongoing for that number 2 component of the financing that we're going to require for this. And then, as Don said, the third piece could actually come later because we can't get it done yet this year in a permanent fashion anyhow. So I think you want to talk about the performance at all, or?
I think it tends to probably pretty much explain itself. But if you have any questions or would like to seek any clarification behind any of this, I welcome those comments, concerns.
Councilman Kell.
I see the great possibilities here, the ice skating, hockey, curling, figure skating, in the summertime, dodgeball tournaments, roller hockey, basketball tournaments. to me, Evergy Plaza is really growing with its events. And to me, this is just something we can just, you know, I'm even picturing, like someone mentioned earlier, about a Winter Wonderland situation right off on the other side. A big pole right in the center with lights coming down like the giant Christmas tree. Monies, you're talking about the dashers, which are the sideboards. Have you looked at possibly doing advertising on those to generate more income?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes. So if you look in that pro forma, you will see that there is some sponsorship revenue coming in year after year. So that is through those sponsorships. So you, if you go, here, I can back it up here for a second. Or maybe I can't. Can you back up to that second to last slide? There, almost. Yeah, there we go. So you'll see there's a sponsorship line there, and that is not including that $400,000 we're talking about, that title sponsor. And that's because we are able to get some smaller partners that want to just have their logo on a dasher board every year, and sponsor, you know, other events and things that may happen on the ice.
And the one thing I didn't see was the option to me to, if you're having events on there, like a concession stand of some type, also to me would help bring in a lot more revenue there also, that we could have someone there that's working there, because we're gonna have multiple people working there. So to me, that's just another avenue of income.
Yep, for sure. And we also have invited often, you know, food trucks, other things. I mean, the 2 years ago when we had it, there was a hot chocolate stand that was there every single day. So there, yeah, definitely opportunities like that.
Yeah, like I said, now that we're talking full sheet, I'm 100% behind this, because I see all the different opportunities we can have with this in summertime and wintertime, and to use it also along with our other events as maybe even a VIP space during the summertime when we have an event going on the plaza right there, or some other use there with the other events going on.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, I think it's helping fulfill the original purpose of these transient guest tax dollars, right? This is driving activity, tourism-wise, from both in and outside regional draw to Topeka to come and experience these things downtown. And you know, outside of ice skating, there's not a whole lot you can do in the winter. Outside, you know, we of course have the Miracle on Kansas Avenue and those big events that have a huge draw, but all the other time in the winter, this fills a nice gap.
Which, like I said before, I think we started in 2020 with Evergy, and it's kind of just blossomed so great over the last couple of years with all the different events we have going on in there, and just the ideas that people are coming up with to use it for is amazing.
I had the pleasure of being involved back in 2015 when this 1% was set up originally for the 4 entities that wound up receiving the money: the Plaza, Constitution Hall, Jayhawk, and Evel Knievel Museum. And I know that one of the key components of that entire agreement at that point in time was that this money would be used to build infrastructure. You know, this was all about doing things in Topeka that would increase travel and tourism to Topeka. And this ice rink, I think, is just another extension of that, as we try, you know, ask you to reallocate those Evel Knievel dollars to this effort. So,
Councilwoman Hofer, then Deputy Mayor.
I'm going to bring this back to what we're actually focused on, and it's the transient guest tax money. We, in fact, it was Councilman Duncan last year talked to Evel Knievel when they found out that they were going to move, and they discontinued their acceptance of transient guest tax money. So we've been accumulating and trying to figure out how we wanted to spend it. This was brought to us, and it met our criteria of number one, being an infrastructure project, and two, bringing more people in and kind of, what's the word, expanding or multiplying the money that we invested. We've had numerous questions, and we've gone back and forth on exactly what would be involved. It is not going to be run by the city. We're strictly supplying money to the project for Downtown Foundation to run it. What they do from there with their future projects, their sponsorships, that is on them. We are strictly here to decide whether we want to dedicate the money as a base for them to start this project. There's been an agreement developed between the city and Downtown Topeka on how the money will be handled. That agreement has been between the city and Downtown Topeka, or Downtown Foundation. It's been approved. Everybody has signed off on it. I don't think there will be a problem with the money not being spent for this. So there is a clawback provision if this does not come to be. So we have the guarantees we need to handle it. And it's something that we have been, a lot of people have talked about in town. So we thought it was an appropriate use of the funds. We voted 3-0 to move this forward, and now it's up to the council to decide if that's how we want to spend the money.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't be voting for this, and this has nothing to do with any of the colleagues that serve on the committee who have done their due diligence. This is not anything personal that way. This is more or less a protest vote. And can someone remind me how long the transient guest tax has been in effect? How many years?
12-year tax. It's a 12-year. I think it started January 1st of 2016.
2016, so long before I was here. Thank you for that. But at any rate, I think you all know that there's been the printout or the letter that was given, and there's some NOTO folks here. I've been on council for a little over 4 years, 4.5 years. There had been dialogue before that about NOTO continually asking for some transient guest tax money, all kinds of dialogues with the numerous city managers that we've had. Some of these meetings I've been privy to, some I have not, trying to do my due diligence as a representative, and no, I'm not going to be in on every meeting. Tried to keep a whole track of it as much as I could. But the bottom line is that more than not voting for this, because, I think it is a good idea, but the concern that I have is the corner that downtown Topeka seems to have on these transient guest tax monies. And that is very concerning to me, because I hear repeatedly, I hear it all over about how important NOTO is. NOTO is part of the downtown corridor. NOTO is this. We're going to put them on our plans. NOTO is this. NOTO is that. But they cannot seem to get any of these funds. Now, if I'm wrong, I will stand corrected. I will stand corrected if NOTO is not eligible for transient guest tax funds. I will stand corrected, and I would hope that someone would actually tell Tom Underwood and staff that they're not eligible whenever these funds might come available. This is not diminishing what's happening, because I think that this is good. But at the same time, we can't keep saying that we prop up something and then provide no funding for it when everybody else is getting funding. And I don't mean that literally. So, people that are involved in this realm know what I'm talking about. So my understanding is at this point, there's about 70% of transient guest tax money that this downtown area has. And that's just not fair. It's not. And I'm sure I'm going to hear all kinds of good arguments. I'm going to hear all of that. But NOTO also brings in people to sleep overnight in hotels. I used to have, with the small nonprofit, we used to have festivals there for 5 years when we had attendance anywhere from 25 to 5,000 people. At least a third of those were from out of town, and they took up hotel space. So I think that, what it's really going to come down to, are we going to continue to just do empty promises or pat people on the back and go, yeah, we're really going to support you? And I mean that me doing my due diligence as well, okay? Because probably should have known that this was coming down the pike, but I didn't see how quick it was all coming, and that's on me. But by the same token, the request that NOTO has had for trying to get funding has been long before I came on board. So again, I will not be supporting this. Thank you.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hey, Michelle, you're the chair, right? Is there a process, like the money comes back, do we put out a notice? Or we just allocate it? I mean, how does that work? Because I would think if we, and I heard Spencer say, you know, I'm going to see where that money's going to make sure we get it back. But to be fair, doesn't it come back to the pot and then we put out another notice? Or is that how it works?
Basically, it came back to us, and last year we discussed it, and we put it off and put it off. And this year last year and this year both, we went back and looked at the original groups that applied for the TGT funds. And most of those projects were either no longer viable or they had found other funding. So we were starting basically with either splitting it with the groups we already had. That was option number one. Option two was finding somebody else. And we did not come up with very many people asking for it.
Did we put out anything saying we've got some money, gets transit monies available?
Yep.
Did we do that? I mean, I understand sometimes, I've seen it happen, they go back and give them a little bit more because everybody could use more. But since we decided not to do that, did we say, hey, I mean, I think that's only fair that we do that if we didn't do that.
Well, I'll address that because I was chair last year and you were on the committee. We held 4 meetings, and in each of those meetings we discussed this. And we reviewed all those old contracts. We publicly said at each meeting, we don't know what to do with this, but if you've got an idea, come to us. We had several organizations that did with half ideas or some conceptual stuff. We were under no statutory or ordinance obligation to reopen the process. I think we thought at the time, while it's an important amount of money, it wasn't millions of dollars, it was a smaller amount. And so I think we spent last year struggling with how to make some sort of allotment as we walked through that. And I think at the end of the day, we just determined that we would listen to what community members said after those 4 meetings and then punt it to the next year. I don't think we knew who would be on the committee at that time. And so we sort of then landed in their lap this year to sort of walk through that process. So that was our thought process last year.
And I remember that, Spencer, and I remember being on that committee. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
Did we send anything out or make notice that we have this money available? Did we have them apply, or it was just made within the committee?
We did no applications because we didn't want to start. I remember we had a couple conversations about not wanting to start a competitive process like that if we thought we could target projects in another method. Maybe that was the wrong decision, maybe it was the right decision. I don't know the answer to that, but I think we chose not to do that because also of the amount that is still 6 years left, so it wasn't the full 12 years. So that was just kind of our thought process.
Councilman Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. I second what Councilwoman Hofer says. We're here for the allocations of those dollars. In this position as a TGT committee member, I support the reallocation of these funds for something that people from all different walks of life can go to and support many times over. As a Topeka citizen, I personally have never been to Harley-Davidson and most likely would never have gone there. That's not my thing and probably will never have been. I'm 40 and losing my athleticism by the day, but I will be trying to learn how to skate with this project going through. Fully supportive of this.
Okay. We're still under public comment. No, I guess we still have a couple of people. Yeah, we have a couple of people still under public comment. Do you have questions for Kurt?
Well, I wanted to give a little background on the TGT if I could, because I think I hear what the committee's done. Just to go back, I don't know how long the transient guest tax allocations existed before like 2000, but if you put it in a little bit more perspective, the first big thing that was funded was the Great Overland Station in North Topeka. And what they did then was they set up, that was a major grant, and then they had small grants that were made available annually on the side for strategic investments in various things that would attract visitors, if you remember. And so that paid all the way through in North Topeka first for the Great Overland Station. Then there was also a supplemental tax that was put on to do sunflower soccer in North Topeka. And then when the expiration of that Great Overland Station project came, and that was an end date for that particular round of transient guest tax, a decision was made then by the committee at the time that instead of doing all these little grants every year, that there should be a bigger scale of strategic investment. And so they wanted to put all of the transient guest tax into whatever it turned out to be. They did a competitive grant process. Ultimately, it was a choice of 4 that were going to be 12 years, so that they could really get some projects like Constitution Hall and Jayhawk that had just languished over the years with enough money that they could leverage it to really get done. And the Harley-Davidson thing was the very smallest. The Evel Knievel Museum was the smallest of those 4 grants. And then something happened and the museum's going to Las Vegas. But we're talking about, not that $178,000 isn't a lot of money, but compared to what those other grants were and so on, it's the smallest. As far as I'm concerned, so if people in NOTO want North Topeka to be primary again, which is fine, this 12-year commitment will end in 2027. So in 2025 and 26, it would not be unreasonable for the TGT committee to begin to start looking, because we've got plenty of time, at and talking to the council, talking to people in the community about how we want to structure that program from 2027 forward. And there will be an opportunity then to choose whether it's a competitive 12-year gig like the last one with just really big projects, or just what to do. So I know that there's a sense of not getting a chance to compete, but perhaps if NOTO can develop a major project, maybe the big ice rink that everybody from all over northeast Kansas can be in the North Topeka area. But to be thinking now about what that project might be, or where that ice rink would be, the big one, now's the time to do that. We can't do everything at once, but I certainly support the decision that was made right now, because this project's ready to go. And we really did get surprised at how popular ice skating was in Topeka, Kansas. It was really pretty amazing. And if I can just throw in a little more on that, I do hope, I have experience in college where my roommate was on one of the ice hockey teams, and they had to play from midnight to 4 because that's when the ice was open. But I hope that the ice can be made available to our teams, at least for scrimmages and so on, and practice to be available at hours that's not open for public skating. I also remember in Hallmark, they have an ice rink too, and the guys that worked the rink then, as soon as they closed the hours, would scrimmage because they all wanted to be NHL hockey players, and that was kind of fun to watch. So hopefully we can be flexible even with the ice.
Okay.
Thank you.
Want to move this along? First, Councilman Kell, and then Councilman Duncan.
Well, kind of what Councilwoman Hofer said is, kind of try to multiply this, and how you brought up Sunflower Soccer. It's actually Sunflower Sports now, because they've grown so much that they want to branch out besides just soccer now, and have a lot more events going on out there. And there's really good talks when they brought it up about how, what they're trying to plan on doing. And that's why I think this is good, and it's growing a certain area. We only have a set little time to do it in, and then, like you said, it can reopen again, and we can look at other things rather than just tossing some money somewhere just to say, okay, let's try to figure out, the plan is, like I said, it caught me off guard, and I'm on the committee kind of thing, how fast it was going. And it's this, as Councilwoman said, if we can multiply that fund and get more people into the hotel rooms, we're gonna have more money to do more things with.
Councilman Duncan?
Thank you, Mayor. Comment and then a question for Kurt. My comment is this. The travesty in some of this is we are suffering the very poor decision-making of 6 city managers ago and a legal staff that's no longer here. And here was the mistake they made. I'm going to use very simple math, but they wrote these contracts as such that if you were going to get $100,000 over, I'm going to say a 10-year period, instead of saying you get your $10,000 a year, they wrote each contract to say, we'll give you your $10,000, and then if there's any excess collection of TGT funds, we will add those on top of what you're owed. So not more than you were allotted, but so in theory you could reach your total in 8 years if there were excess funds versus the 12 years.
Right.
Now, COVID sort of screwed that up a little bit, and some of those were down, and so we tried to use some of those extra funds. Why that was a mistake was prior to that decision, what would happen is everybody got their guarantee, and then if there were excess funds at the end of each year, they were available to other organizations besides those that put in place. That was a really bad decision, and I really hope in 3 years, when this comes up again, we don't make that same mistake. Because that has ensured that there aren't some additional funds for groups like NODO and others in this community. And that's too bad. We tried to change some of those contracts. It didn't work. We're stuck with that choice. But that's partly how we've gotten here into sort of this, the problems we're having with those funds. My question does relate to infrastructure. I like that we're bringing more people into Topeka, into downtown. But there's a very basic human need, and it's called going to the bathroom. And I'm curious, and this may be a larger conversation with the foundation, but what's the bathroom situation going to be as we open up these to more people on a more regular basis coming down there? Because I know that there's some businesses concerned about that because they want to help people, but they're not open for bathroom use, and we don't really have many public restrooms down here, but we're bringing more people down here. So has that been any part of any conversation?
It's been yes. Short answer, it's been a subject of discussion. And it is something that needs to be addressed. And as the activities increase on the plaza, then so can the hours that those doors are open. Unfortunately, I think we've had one or two major fires in the restrooms. People have decided to try and, light the toilet paper rolls on fire, and we had several $1,000s worth of damage to one of the restrooms. So that kind of set us back on our heels a little bit, and but we do need to rethink it as the level of activity increases.
Okay.
And I give you that.
Thank you.
I don't want to cut short your presentation, Kurt. You're good?
We're good.
Councilman, we'd have two more people who had signed up and want to speak to the issue before we take any action. So I'll call two individuals up. Tom Underwood. Thomas, good to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, City Council. Thanks for the opportunity to have this conversation this evening. We just found out about this last night. Somebody forwarded to me the news report on, guess what? There's going to be transient guest tax used for a ice rink downtown. By no means is this a negative comment about an ice rink. What this is a comment in regards to, some of the other things in regards to, we have projects ready to go. I've been vying for this for quite some time in regards to how can NODO get a part of this buy. I've even proposed that we increase the transient guest tax, and that was pretty well shut down. So I'm always looking in terms of what can we do to enhance our opportunities. Before I go on, though, let me say I put out a notice this morning to the NODO Board of Directors. I put out a notice this morning to the NODO District and certainly to the NODO staff. I said, hey guys, guess what? Wasn't my plans to be here tonight to sit here this evening, but we're going to be here. Pedra's here. I'm asked the people from NODO, either the business owners, board members, employees, whatever, stand up to at least let the folks here on the council know that you're here this evening. Okay, thank you so much. This was all last minute, as again, we just found out about this last night. So NODO, I'm the executive director of the NODO Arts Entertainment District organization. We cultivate art and experiences that inspire opportunity, enhance economic vitality, improve the overall quality of life through Topeka. We do that in a lot of different ways. I know I'm speaking fast, but I know I have a limited time. Public art, we have over 50 pieces of public art in the NODO, in that district. We are the most highly concentrated area of public art in the community. That is an attraction. We know that people come to visit Topeka because of public art, culture, and history. The Noto Arts Center has an award-winning art gallery, and the entire building features art that we know is, again, a draw. Right now, we're doing the Topeka Reflections exhibit, Art and History. This fall, I'm very excited that we are having a huge exhibit starting in October from the Chicago Field Museum. Maybe you most know about Red Bud Park. Okay, not too long ago in 2017 when I started, it was an old parking lot full of weeds and broken glass and whatnot. When I started, I was said, you know, Tom, you need to go build a park. Not part of my resume. I've never done that before in my life. But pull people together. If you go to Red Bud Park now, you are surrounded by murals. You are in the middle of about 6 sculptures, and there's a huge stage. This huge stage features performing art, music, theater, so on and so forth, throughout the entire year. We start in February, we go through December. We actually take January off. But beyond that, it's being used every single month. We have something going on throughout the entire year. How do we fund all this? I do a lot of begging, frankly. We are contingent upon donations, sponsorships, and grants, and we do that a lot. Not that we do get some support. Visit Topeka, for example, is supporting the art exhibit coming up this fall. Visit Topeka, for example, is sponsoring or a partial sponsor on our summer concert series. So it's not that we don't get some tourism dollars, but we don't get tourism dollars to support our ongoing efforts and our infrastructure. The small amount that you're talking about, God, if we could just get that, that would go so far. Those are the cookie crumbs that we would love to have, to be honest with you. We are the arts and entertainment district for Topeka. Not too long ago, it was a place to avoid. Now it's a place to celebrate. People come here. We have thousands of visitors from all over the country, from all over the world, comes to Noto. You know, whether it's because of an event, whether it's because they're passing through and they heard about it, people come to Noto on a regular basis. We are a tourist destination. I'm really proud of what I've been able to do with Noto for the past 7 years. You may well know I'm going to be leaving the organization soon. We've identified someone to take my place, Pedro Concepcion. I'll leave it to him to talk about what the future is. But my clarion call, almost from day one, was equity of resources, equity of what. If other areas can get it, how do we get it? It took me about 6 years to figure out how transient guest tax worked. It's kind of complicated. I've had conversations with many of you in this room in regards to how can Noto get a part of that, because we're doing great things.
Tom,
we're doing great things, and we need the support to make that happen.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I need to because I think I heard the timer go off.
Yes, and I
your
just
time
ignored
is
it.
up.
I just ignored it. Kept going.
So I can't see it from here. I can't see it from here, and you're on a roll, so I want to give everybody else a chance.
I was waiting for you to stop me, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Tom. Second one is Pedro Concepcion.
Thank you, Governor Body. Thank you, governing body and TGT committee. As Tom has stated, we have tried to do so much in Noto, and through challenges and resilience, Noto has transformed into a vibrant hub of arts, culture, and diversity, a place that we feel and we can call home. Over the years, we have worked diligently to evolve and expand our efforts in creating centers for art and entertainment. As Tom had said, Red Bud Park stands as a testament to this progress, showcasing talented musicians, impressive sculptures, and serving a true artistic hub. The Noto Art Center, including the award-winning Morris Art Gallery, is essential to our mission, with exhibits like the Topeka Reflections, which blends art and history in this fall. And this fall, we will have the Dia de los Muertos exhibit, featuring a traveling collection from the Chicago Field Museum. We connect our community to diverse cultural narratives and artistic expression. Despite our challenges we face, we have continually risen to the occasion, and we are now seeking consideration for TGT tax funding to be able to present a proposal to continue this momentum and demonstrate to both the governing body and TGT committee that we are far from finished. With ongoing riverfront development and new housing opportunities in Noto, we aim to further enhance district economic in Topeka. I can truly stand here and speak volumes of how Noto has become a beacon of art, culture, and diversity. But I'll leave it to this, what Visit Topeka describes Noto. Visit Topeka describes Noto Art and Entertainment District as a dedicated, stimulating cultural and economic life surrounding area throughout the Midwest, Whether you're looking to observe and at the art scene, or you need some tasty cuisine, Noto Arts and Entertainment Districts is eclectic, and it's a place to be. I really feel that TGT taxes will help us out a lot, and we have come a long way in the past 10 years for Noto. I just would want some equity and make sure that we do a process that's equitable and fair, and hopefully you guys allow us to present a proposal where maybe we show you how we deserve this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate all the comments that I've heard and the concerns about how we use this money and how we use it in a way that everybody is experiencing some success because of the availability of these funds. Before us, though, is this resolution right now. City Manager, would you like to speak to it before we ask for any approval?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Kell.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilman Kell. Is there a second? I will second it. Michelle, did you raise your hand? Okay, I didn't see it. Sorry. Well, for the record, Councilwoman Hofer, take the second. If you'll call the roll.
Councilmembers Ortiz?
Yes.
Banks?
Yes.
Kell?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Dobler? Duncan?
Yes. Still here.
Hofer?
Yes.
Mayor Padilla?
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller?
Yes.
Valdivia Acala?
No.
All right, we have 8 yes, the motion carries with Councilmember Valdivia Acala voting no.
Okay. The motion has passed. I want to ask the clerk and city attorney, we have a long agenda still. We're at 8:20. We have, I think, 4 other people signed up for public comment. I don't want them to have to wait till we get through all of the rest of our non-action discussion on the budget and so forth. Can I bring forward the public comment persons now, and then we can take a break before we get into the long budget discussions and our executive sessions?
So can I make a motion to move public comment as the final action, at the end of action items before we go to non-action items?
Do we have to vote, or can we just do it?
I think technically you should vote, but I think you can do it by all in favor say aye rather than a roll call vote if you would like to.
I'm just trying to be,
You have a motion and you would just need a second.
just trying to be considerate of the people that are here and everything.
Second.
Okay. Okay. All those in favor of that motion to move the public comment to the last item on our action item agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So for those of you who are here for public comment, the next person I have is Tyler Jagers.
Is the microphone? Okay, great. Honorable Council, Honorable Mayor, my name is Tyler Stansfield Jaggers. I moved to Topeka as part of the Go Topeka, Choose Topeka program. Members may recognize my name or my person from interviews on Nightline and NPR. First of all, I know there is an ongoing investigation regarding the Harrison Street fires. And this speech is not making accusations, but simply stating facts and also sharing knowledge I have learned in my time living in California and the Bay Area, and finally to make a recommendation. On July 22nd, at approximately midnight that evening, I was hearing sirens and other commotion. I was in my office at the time, home office, and to my surprise, when looking out the window, I saw multiple fire trucks. Then, when I walked into my guest room and looked out the window, I saw a terrible sight. Only one house away from me, to the south, were 2 more homes engulfed in flames. One of the 2 houses was directly adjacent to a homeless encampment and had already suffered incredible and devastating damage. Now, one of the major topics we've been discussing tonight is budget, attracting new talent, new opportunities to generate wealth for Topeka, as well as safety. I feel like this correlates. Firefighters that night were battling the blaze, but my house is very old and fairly tall, and it was the fire that spewed into the night sky that got my attention. I found myself thinking, this is happening way too close to that power distribution station. I know that times are tough right now, but we must protect Topeka's critical infrastructure. When I moved from California, tent cities were popping up all over the place in the Bay Area. And fires, unrest, spilled from these zones over into the neighboring communities. It's why I'm here. It's why I took the money to come here. Regardless of wherever anyone is on the political spectrum, the fact is, Topeka has had significant amount of heat and strong winds. I myself have already had 1 tree removal, and I have 2 more on the way in order to protect my own power lines. Trash, unstable, and unlicensed structures are a self-evident risk to the safety and well-being of everyone in our communities. And critical infrastructure is the core of our productivity. Oh, sorry.
You've got it.
Okay. If prevailing winds picked up any of that trash, we would have had a serious issue if it got to the power distribution node. Therefore, I make the following recommendation to the council. Let the city of Topeka, Kansas have no homeless encampments or unlicensed structures or unlicensed tenting within a 2,000-foot radius adjacent to any side of critical infrastructure. Critical infrastructure shall include, but not be limited to, power substations, police stations, hospitals, schools, fire departments, of course, and any others deemed critical by this council. Thank you, Topeka City Council, for hearing my recommendation.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we have Mr. Brian Cole. Good to see you, Brian.
Thank you. Governing body, Mayor, Dr. Perez, it's an honor to be here as always. For most of you know my work, I've been in law enforcement, corrections, and mental health for almost 38 years. I value public safety. And what I want to talk to you today is, and I promise you I'll get done, is another steps towards public safety. And that I'm here today to publicly and personally invite you all to the groundbreaking of our behavioral health unit, which will be August 14th at 10:30 in the back parking lot of the Department of Corrections, which is at 501 Southeast State. I'll be getting with our mayor, or our city judge, Tudani, also regarding that, who's been a tremendous support. I've already got my word back from Chief Holton. This is going to be, I don't know how to do this. Is this it, or do you push it? Okay, there we go. This will be a state-of-the-art facility that we are contracting with behavioral health experts for the design and the build of our facility. It will be 3 floors. It will have 2 finished floors and a 3rd floor ready to go when we're able to get the money. It's about $10 million a floor. We were able to secure $20 million for this, $10 million from county, and the other 10 from KDASH, the state of Kansas. We've been working very closely with them, my partnership with the state, to build, because this is a community problem, not just Shawnee County. And for anybody that knows me, that I, not only teach, I go all over the country when I talk about behavioral health, and I can tell you that behavioral health in Shawnee County is one of the biggest challenges, if not the biggest challenge, when it comes to dealing with public safety and just overall health. But we will have, on this, you will see, this is just a corner back from 9th and Adams, that it will blend in with the other facade of the facility. It will have outdoor rec areas. We have maximized, I don't know if I can get this. I'm not worried about that. We will maximize color, glass, and light to enhance those who have to deal with trauma-informed care. All of our staff that are coming in will be CIT trained. This will be specialized units to where we're going to be dealing with not only crisis management, suicide protection, but programming. And the other one is I'm working closely with the courts and both city and the 3rd Judicial District on competency restoration. In our facility, I have inmates that wait 2-3 years before they can get to Larned, and then they sit in our jail. And so I want to be able to be instrumental in working with a team of group, not just me. This is not just me. I'm the one I have a lot of smarter people around me than it's just me who do the work, to be able to set up our own program in Shawnee County to where the inmates can get the competency restoration they need to expedite the case, that we can get them to enhance public safety and get them discharged, either going to prison or back in the community, and then having the reentry services that they may need, which could be housing, because over 20% of the staff or inmates that I have are homeless. So it'll be a plethora of programmings when it comes. And this is what would be a rendition inside. There's a lot of things we still have yet to do. I have a wonderful staff that are creating the policies, procedures, but the city of Topeka is a part of our success. And I'm just here to tell you that I wouldn't be where I'm at if it wasn't for some people, the mayor who I've worked with many years before, and all of you who have all come to my office before and have reached out to me on different things, whether it was training, fire department, or things like that. So I just want to say thank you. I am honored to be here. If you do wish to, please send me an email if you plan to be there, because we have representative from our federal delegation, others that will be there. So if you can, my email address is brian.cole@snco.us. Just get with me, or if one person wants to collect it and go through the clerk and say these are the ones that people are going to be here. But this is a very emotional issue for me, but I want to say to you all, thank you for your continued support, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you all. So thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Last person we have is Heather Souther. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I see. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Good evening. I have not done any public speaking since I was 18 years old, and I'm 40 now, so bear with me, I'm super nervous. But my name is Heather Souther. I own and operate Safely Sunning and Sacred Salon near 9th and Kansas downtown. For those who don't know anything about my business, I'd love to share a little bit. We primarily do spray tans every half hour from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m., depending on the day and the time of year. Our business services primarily women, several of them underage as their parent accompanies them. I have a lot of, I call them tiny dancers. They are competition dancers, and they get spray tans weekly during their dance season for competition, to be on stage ready. Our clients undress to get a spray tan. This is completely normal to me, as I've been doing this for 20 years as of tomorrow. But it's a very vulnerable situation to be in for just about everybody else. Imagine coming and going to and from this appointment, whether it's, I have several people in here that I've serviced for spray tans. Some of them might be children of yours, some might be wives of yours, but it's a very vulnerable situation to be in. Imagine an unhoused person approaching you on the sidewalk, or even worse, coming into my lobby, defecating on a chair, and refusing to leave. This actually happened. My clients trust me to provide a service in a safe, clean environment. And I feel like those two things have been compromised. In addition to that, my younger employees look to me for guidance and to keep them safe. And I take that very seriously. I've called the police on a handful of occasions because an unhoused person won't leave when they've been asked, when they try to pick a verbal fight with a client who's waiting, or when they steal merchandise. I'm sorry to say the police never came, not once. I'm not here to complain. I'm just here to make you aware of what's going on. I've worked downtown for 10 years in the beauty industry, and I've seen a lot of changes that have negatively impacted my small business. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The final person on public comment is Henry McClure.
Henry McClure, how are you?
I'm fine.
Thanks, Mayor. That's heartbreaking. You know, I'm a small business. I want to make an analogy about supporting small business. You know, all the oxygen left the room over $1,000. But that's heartbreaking. I'm telling you, I saw her trembling. I came to talk about the newspaper. I got a call from Tim Rencher. I was kind of cringing about, okay, what's going on? Is this going to be an I gotcha piece? What's motivating this whole thing? But I sat there and, you know, I'm going to have to answer for things. And we're all going to have to answer for our transgressions at some time. And then I heard earlier on today the platitudes of the police department and the salaries, and she can't get help for what she's going through. I'm a little distracted, but I want to talk about what's called constructive eviction. And when the city of Topeka takes a action for non-payment of your water bill, and a building doesn't have water for over a year, and the building didn't condemned, you're really basically constructively evicting the tenant. I was not involved with management on the deal. I don't like the management end. I kind of like more of the sales end of real estate and promoting. But what was really wild in court, I was designated the attorney at fact just to, on behalf of the owner, to say, well, this was the procedure that we followed to make the legal eviction. So the guy should have been evicted by code a year ago. And 16 months ago, 13 months ago, I wrote a letter to the city asking for help. I mean, I can see the future. I know what's going to happen. And nobody showed up. Nobody showed up to help Pizza Hut get open. 2 years later, look at it. You'd have $50,000 in rent, or $50,000 in property tax and sales tax if you just would help small business. But I came down here today because the whole story really wasn't told in that. But 16 months ago, I wrote the letter and nobody showed up. And then I'm promoted. I get painted in the corner as being the evil guy. And I'm sick of it. And it's really one of the biggest motivating factors for me to retire my real estate license. You can't make money in this town the way this town's run.
Okay. That's the last person that we have signed up for public comment. We do have a lengthy agenda still ahead of us with non-action items, with a discussion on the 2025 operating budget, plus 3 executive sessions. I'm asking the governing body if we can take at least a 15 to 20 minute break and then come back in for our non-action items. I know that there are people here who want to stay for the operating budget as well, but that's going to take quite a bit of time. So does the governing body have an opinion, or are they opposed to it? They want to keep working through it?
No, I don't know why we need.
Okay.
We need 20 minutes?
15 minutes. Some people have a hard time getting up and back, so. No. The governing body will go into recess for 15 minutes, except for Duncan gets 10. Huh? I know, that's trying to get you guys there, but.
Mr. Mayor, since it's already 9 o'clock and we have a long way to go, do you want to waive the 10 p.m. rule now, or?
Well, I thought you were going to say all the words for me. Yep. Move to extend after 10 p.m.
Okay, a motion, and I'll second it, to extend us beyond the 10 o'clock deadline to allow us to continue our discussions. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Aye. Yeah. You're gonna have 3 more times to do that later on tonight too, probably. Okay. So now we can start, Madam Clerk. Non-action items.
Yeah, I got it.
Yep. First item is just discussion on the 2025 operating budget.
Okay. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the governing body. We have Ben Hart, our interim CFO, and Josh McInerney, our budget manager, who are going to take us through this item. Before we get there, I do want to acknowledge the public for their input that we sought and that we obtained through 5 budget listening sessions. They definitely did highlight a number of priority areas for us, whether they were for or against them. So I do want to thank the public for allowing it. I do want to thank the public for not allowing or for having that dialogue with us. I do want to thank the team, the city teams, for all the directors, all of the budget managers, all the teams that had any input with the budget process. I did meet with the department directors. As you will see, the numbers going forward, we are going to have some pretty crucial decisions to make for our future budget years. But again, I just want to acknowledge the teams for really looking at their operations today, and then also how it may be impacted in the future. And then lastly, I wanted to thank you, Mr. Mayor, and members of the governing body for your time and for your guidance in getting us to this point. I know that there were some surprises. I think some things that that maybe we haven't talked about before, and so I just want to thank you for your input and for your guidance. And yeah, with that, we'll turn it over to the team.
Okay.
Thank you, City Manager. So like City Manager said, we're starting our initial budget presentations tonight, and these will go through till our public hearing date on September 10th. This is just an agenda slide for the public if they're following along, page numbers of slides, and some of the things we'll go over tonight. And then this is a tentative budget presentation schedule. So tonight's just the general budget overview, then the next 3 weeks we'll be doing departments. And then finally, our public hearing date will be on September 10th. One thing of note is we will have a special meeting, which will be hopefully voted on the 13th, for August 27th. Just with primaries being canceled on the 6th, we thought we needed to have another meeting. That way we're not rushing the process and everyone's comfortable with the budget we're approving, hopefully on September 10th. So. And like Dr. Perez alluded to, we had 5 budget listening sessions. There was robust conversations at each one of them. These are some of the things we heard. Some citizens wanted enhanced services for one area, while for other citizens for that same area wanted decreased service in that area. So there's a lot of back and forth discussions on it. All in all, it was pretty good. And I think the main takeaway is I think a lot of people learned that just your property taxes don't go just to the city. They also go to the school district you live in, the county, the metro, the airport authority, et cetera. So it was good to get that education piece out there. So those are just some of the things we've heard. We heard more, but that was just a general idea of what people said. So now getting into the meat and potatoes. So at this point, we have a sales tax projection, franchise fee projection, and our other revenue sources. So really the only thing the council kind of controls now is the property tax lever of where we set our mill rate at. So the takeaway from this slide is if we did an R&R mill rate, which is what we taxed people last year on their property, we'd have a lower revenue bound of $113 million thereabout. Now, if we did the maximum mill levy rate that was set a couple weeks ago, I think on July 13th, we'd project about $118 million in our citywide general fund. So depending on where the mill levy falls in this budget cycle, we're projecting anywhere from $113 million of revenue in our general fund versus 118. So somewhere in that range. Next, we want to, this was kind of part of our public education piece where if you live in the 501 school district, these have been your mill rates for your property over the last couple of years. So if you pay $1,000 in property taxes a year, about a quarter of that goes to the city of Topeka, while 32% goes to the county. Another substantial portion goes to the school district. That's just an education piece. Then also, the councils, and as long as the other entities, have lowered their mill levies the last several years. And then building off that slide, this just gives the public an idea of where we set the mill rate at, what they pay in property taxes. So I won't go through each one of these columns, but if you have a $200,000 appraised property and we kept a current mill rate of 36.952, a homeowner would pay about $850 to the city of Topeka for their portion of property taxes. So we were asked to put together what our general fund expenses look like for our 3 largest departments in the general fund. So in this case, it's police, fire, and public works. So for those 3 departments, we're projecting about $103 million of expenses for the 2025 budget. And we'll get into why it increased, but it was primarily because of personnel. So for police and fire, 90% of each of their increases were just from personnel increases to keep employees and help with recruitment for the future. And then for public works, that increases for project management support as we try to keep up with our replacement cycles of our assets, streets, roads, bridges, et cetera. So for the 2025 budget, our top line expense projection is $128.4 million. Now, obviously, going back to the previous revenue slide, 113 and 118 are less than 128, right? So for this budget, we are proposing utilizing the unassigned reserve fund to plug that deficit. Now, to do that, we will have to make some amendments on our CIP in the form of moving some current cash funded projects and scheduled cash funded projects to bonding. That way we can free up cash now to help plug that deficit in the future. And so the primary driver of that being the FIRM program that was voted in April to move back to the operating budget, or cash funded, sorry. We were proposing moving that back to bonding. Reason being is in lieu of bonding the last several years, we had ARPA dollars, which allowed us to bond less, and that created a substantial raise in fund balance for our debt service fund. So that the debt service fund can support bonding the 2025 firm program. So given the worst case scenario on the previous slide, which is the R&R rate and staying at an R&R rate, if we did that, our general fund, it's asked every year, where would our fund balance projection be? So we were projecting at the end of 2025, we'd be at about 17.67% fund balance, given our lowest, or I guess our lowest presented mill levy rate, which is the R&R rate. Now, our minimum fund balance policy is 15%, our target's 20%. This would still be adhering to those 2 percentages. Now, if we did that, one thing to note is that would be utilizing all the unassigned reserves. So those one-time projects that we've been voting on in the Policy and Finance Committee and eventually the Council, that money would be depleted using to plug the deficit for 25. Now, I think this is an important slide to share. A majority of the city's expenses are personnel costs. So it's about 75% of the general fund budget is solely dedicated to personnel. That includes benefits, standard personnel costs, et cetera. Now, of our projected revenue, so of that $113 million, that would be 86%. So with a growing personnel expense environment, it could eventually get to the point where we have to examine policies because our revenue will just be able to barely cover our expense costs in the future. Now, inevitably, we're going to get to ask the question, how did expenses increase from 24 to 25? So in your budget book, the FY24 expense budget to FY25 increased about $13.4 million. Now, 9.4 of that was in personnel costs. So that's with present union contracts, non-management increases, healthcare, et cetera. We also, last year, just based off timing, hotel operating expenses, that wasn't in the budget last year, but now since we possess it as a city, we have to account for that now. Next, an increase in our inmate contract with the county. That's exponentially gone up in the last several years to where last year was budgeted $800,000. It came in just under $1 million, to where we're projecting that to be about $1.1 million for the 25 budget. And then a couple of others I've already alluded to, the engineering, project management support, vehicle requests for various departments, and then we're implementing an ERP system, and those fees for that start coming online in 2025. Now, one important thing to note is sometimes when personnel costs increase, it could be because, okay, you're paying your current employee roster more, or you're adding people. In this case, the general fund isn't adding people. It's just our current employee roster is growing in wages. So we approve, obviously, a budget in a one-year cycle, but it's always important to look forward to the future. So in 2025, like we said, and this is assuming just keeping the mill rate flat and a standard valuation increase, we can get through it by using unassigned reserves to plug the deficit. But in 26 and 27, there would be a deficit of $17 million or $20 million because we don't have those one-time reserves anymore, and we're locked into contracts. Now, let's say we had to make decisions today, right, and we didn't have one-time reserves. What would that look like? Well, if we did straight cuts across general fund departments across the board, and we were in the year 2026, that's about a 13% cut to each department. Now, if we didn't touch anything like police, fire, public works, or social service grants, things we give out to the community, we'd be asking those departments that I just did not name, to make substantial cuts to their budget, such as planning, finance, HR, code enforcement, et cetera. And then building off that, in 2027, we'd have to make 15% cuts if we had a $20 million deficit, and then basically large department cuts, wholesale cuts across the board. Now, obviously, what I just talked about was in the future. That's not necessarily for this budget cycle. Something that the city manager would like to explore in the future are other budget policy considerations for over the next 15 to 18 months for the FY26 budget and beyond. So some of the ideas that are being thrown out, and none of these are set in stone yet because we'd like to go to the Policy and Finance Committee to obviously vet these and then get buy-in from the council for an eventual vote by that committee, then the governing body itself. But they'd be things like a half-cent public safety sales tax, which would be used to help out with law enforcement. It could be a half-cent general use tax for general operations. And each of those, or let me go back, the citywide half-cent sales tax that's currently instituted generates about $19 million a year. Now, if shopping habits didn't change and people still shopped here, given current demand, one of those taxes would generate $19 million in theory. Building on that, we have a fee schedule that hasn't been updated for core inflation in quite some time. So we'd also like to take that back to the Policy and Finance Committee to vet those fees and see if there's buy-in from council to adjust those fees in hopes to get more revenue for the city to address future needs. And again, all those would be considered in the future, not necessarily for this budget cycle, but over the course of the next 15 to 18 months. Oops. Now, this is just a slide showing, let's say we got everything on the previous slide. What would that look like? If you got one of the half-cent sales tax, that would make us basically budget neutral for the next couple of years. And then let's say we got everything we wanted, you'd have money to do projects being talked about now, such as affordable housing, economic development, investing more in infrastructure. Now, you don't necessarily have to do those three, but those are just ideas that have been thrown out in the past. But the purpose of that slide is to show you what it could look like. Oops. Now, going back earlier, we had various mill rate scenarios, right? So we had our R&R rate up to our maximum mill rate of 38.952. What would it look like if we approved a mill rate at each one of those? Obviously, you can do anything in the middle, but those were just the bounds that we chose. So let's say you just did a current mill rate. That would leave us with an ending 2025 fund balance of $25 million, and we would just be a hair under our target fund balance, but still above our policy floor of 15%. Now, let's say you did the maximum mill rate, just as an example. You'd be above you'd be at 20% reserve numbers by the end of 25, and you'd have an additional $2.2 million in unassigned reserves that would go back to the Policy and Finance Committee to do one-time projects or help out with future budget needs. So those are the options on the table, but as currently in your budget book as it's proposed is proposing a 1 mil increase. Now the rationale behind that is we'd still be at our 20% target and you'd still have a little money left in your unassigned reserves, about to a tune of $763,000. That could be used on one-time projects or help out with future needs. And then to that, obviously this is our first budget conversation. We'll have many more to come, but this is just kind of a groundwork laying out because it's important to know how much the city's planning on spending, how much revenue we have coming in, and then before we actually get to department presentations. And then obviously we have about 4 or 5 more weeks of this, but this was just a high-level overview for the purposes for you guys and the public tonight.
Thank you, Josh. Questions for Josh? Any additional detail that you need? Do we still have, there, I see Marcus. Okay, good. Okay. City Manager, anything to add?
Mayor and members of the governing body, I just want to articulate that the information we provided to you this evening and to the public, we didn't take lightly. We do realize that there are going to have to be, again, as I mentioned at the onset, there are going to have to be some serious discussions, some serious reviews of our budgets, and serious considerations for the decisions we make in the near future. So I just, again, just want to thank the teams and And thank you for your attention for this item as well.
Councilman Duncan.
So I guess I have a procedural question since this is the first time with you. And Josh made a comment, which I know he didn't mean it the way, so I'm not going to jump on you, Josh. You didn't mean this way when you started. That really all we can do at this point is look at the mill rate. I'll push back that a little because I think as we go through each department, some of us are going to have some suggestions on areas where we could make some changes to help maybe bring it down if we have them. So I guess my question to you is going through this process, as we do that, how would you like us to get you suggested changes? I mean, would you like us to wait till we're towards the end? Would you like them to do them as they come to us? Do you care? I mean, if we have some suggested changes, we want to see how would you like them to get them to you and staff?
Thank you for that question, sir. What I would ask for is we would have proposed amendments that would be routed through the budget office, and then as a body we'll come together and take motions to approve or reject those motions.
Okay.
That would be, unless somebody else has another idea, but that's typically, I mean, yeah, so that way we can vet it, we can make sure that the rest of the governing body sees it, and then probably on one of the later dates before we actually move to propose or to adopt a budget, we'll consider those amendments to the proposed budget.
And I guess my second question to the mayor is if, or maybe it's the legal, do we need to actually, not necessarily deny, but approve? Does the mayor call that special meeting on the 27th of next month? Do we need to pass something to do it?
Our rules allow it to be announced by the city manager at a meeting, so during announcements, let's just announce it again.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Councilwoman Hillard and Councilwoman Ortiz.
Along the same lines with Councilman Duncan's questions, we've had some routines before, but you may not even know what they were. If people have questions, often there's been kind of a level of where people just have questions because they want to understand something better. And they may want to send them in writing or may ask for a visit. Then there are other questions that they ask because they want everybody to know that they asked that question and what the answer was. Do you have in mind a way that you particularly want to ask us, or
I guess
how to submit?
Yeah, but there's a budget email, budget@topeka.org. You guys or the public can submit it through there, and then as any questions that are asked, we will put out a supplement display, or if it's okay with the person asking, out to the public on what was asked and the answer that finance gave.
So any of us that ask those questions should say, if we just want it for ourselves, say that for you. Otherwise, if we leave it open, it'll get shared with everyone.
Yeah, correct.
Good to know. Yeah. Just confirming. Thank you.
Councilwoman? Okay. Councilwoman Hofer.
You talked about possibly increasing fees. Have you gone about any first rounds of what that might bring, or which ones we're looking at?
So we've had preliminary meetings with all the departments. I don't have a hard list on me right now, but I think we're literally examining every fee in the city. So I don't know if you want to expand on that anymore.
Yeah, no, it's not just the fees that we currently charge, it's fees that maybe we don't charge that we might want to consider. I'll tell you, one of the items that was brought up was burn permits. We don't charge for those today. And as I understand, I think the comp analysis has shown maybe I think other cities may charge around $25 for those. So, but that's not something we currently have on the books. So it's not just the fees that we have on our schedule today, but also anything that we may not be charging for today. I do want to be able to present those options. I understand we'll probably never get close, or we'll probably never fully recover our costs for a number of these services that we provide. But where it makes sense to charge something to recoup some of our costs, I definitely would appreciate the governing body's consideration of some of those items. But as mentioned, we will bring those items to the public finance or to the finance committee for consideration over the course of FY25.
I'm just thinking there's probably some we haven't raised in quite some time that we should be raising them. And I'm not talking about like doubling, tripling, quadrupling, but something reasonable, but something that covers our cost.
Right, and some of the things traditionally where I've seen it done, I mean, sometimes it's just a matter of applying a CPI factor to it, 3% or something. So yes, we would definitely look forward to hearing the governing body's comments on those items.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Obviously, I would think when we're considering those possible fee increases, there probably is some associated information that tells us who's likely to be most impacted by those increases. Because some people who are already maybe at their point of being stretched, that we want to make sure that we give that some consideration when we're looking at that. Councilman Duncan.
To that point, I guess I would ask, since you're doing a review of all of that, which probably has not been done in who knows when in the city, I guess I would also like you to, I know this is going to sound counterproductive to what you're doing, but look at the inverse of that. And there may not be many, but I'll give you an example. I think it's $8 or something to register your pet, right? And we've talked about that seems really low. It's only $8. But if we're just charging $8 for the sake of charging because we feel like we should, but it's not really a revenue generator, and our goal is to encourage people to register their pets for a variety of public safety and other reasons, maybe some of those fees that aren't doing much anyway budgetary could be looked at to either eliminate or lower while we're then doing other fees that are going to be actual things to recoup some of those costs. So just an idea, since we're doing the full review, if any of those pop up, I don't know what they'd be, and there may not be any, but just I'd like to put that into the world as a thought process too as we go through them.
Will do, sir.
Councilwoman Heller.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess overall, I appreciate that we've now got this in our hands, but I'm super concerned. And if we've got a shortfall of whatever, I can't keep up with all of them, of 13 million straight out of the chute, and we only have 11 in that unappropriated fund, and if we spend it all, and next year we've got an additional 4 million in natural growth, so now we're 17 million short and we've got nothing in the hole, that is not tenable. And so I just don't see how we in good conscience can even start this year without really looking at every department and every expense. Anything from simply dropping a fee that's taking more expense to collect it and keep books on it than it is in a revenue. And we need to be talking, I mean, nothing should fail to be considered, but if we need to be talking 6 and 7 figures items so that they really do add up to 10 to 13 million dollars, this is the time to introduce that. We need to be looking at big money. I know that I haven't, this is my first time to see the book, but talking about using vacancy credits to kind of soften that a little bit. If those vacancy credits have already been counted in that 13 million shortfall, then it's really 17 already. And we just need to take that really seriously and as positively as possible go through, respecting all the work that the immediate lead staff are doing and that all the staff in the departments and all the work that we do, but it's not sustainable. We need to, and he's nodding away. You're welcome.
Exactly right.
It's not sustainable, and in my view, we shouldn't even go there because we cannot face what it's going to look like in a year.
Right.
If we obligate ourselves for as much money as apparently is in this budget today. He's nodding and nodding and nodding.
Mayor, if I may, one of the critical reasons that 26 and 27 is part of this budget is what you just said. We've got to start now.
Yep.
And there's several things that are put in place. There's countless conversations that have been had with staff between City Manager Perez with Josh, just amongst themselves. They've seen this presentation, and those that were at the the public sessions saw it again. So they've seen it ad nauseum. They kind of know the criticality of it. Robert's had several conversations with us as directors, saying, well, here's your margin. If you've got this amount, be thinking about what that looks like, what you're talking about. So those conversations have taken place. On the revenue side, anytime we look at a revenue, we need to be looking at it. I mean, scrubbing it, just like sales tax. How confident are we? What's the level of confidence of the percentage increase in sales tax? Other revenues are no different. There should be a comprehensive fee schedule, and I know his city attorney talked about it too, just for transparency's sake, for that matter, so people can see here's what the fees are all in one place, and here's what we charge. But then having that available every year as we go through the budget, even if you're just dusting it off and moving on, it's looked at every year, and you're not waiting years to look at it again. Yeah, just keep on top of it. It doesn't mean they have to be increased. It just means they need to be looked at. Absolutely.
And just to finish, I mean, what we talked about for the last couple of years, and I don't know if it's built in here, but the concept of outcomes-based budgeting really does make sense. We never really got very deep into it, honestly, in the 2 or 3 years that it was introduced. But what outcomes-based budgeting means is, why are we doing this? You know, is this important? Is this increasing the value of our city? Is it a service that's important? Should we be doing it? All of those kinds of things, even if it's important for our community, which is where it gets into the strategic plan side. But, you know, why are we doing this? Should we be doing it? Because it's that level of evaluation that we may need to do, not just looking at dollars and pushing them around, but 17 million is a lot of money. Thank you.
Further comment? Councilwoman Ortiz?
So I know we've gotten some big sums on grants, like the RAISE grant was $25,000. I think, did we get an infrastructure grant, or are we still waiting on that? But anyway, all the grants that we had in those areas, are we taking that into consideration? Are we just leaving that amount the same, or are we just saying, okay, we're gonna cut that back like 25,000 or half of it or whatever? What are we doing with the grants that we're getting?
Are you talking about if we get a grant, then that can lower operating expenditures? There's been some discussions on that. We haven't gotten deep into that yet, but we can bring that as suggestions. The one that comes to mind is, like you said, the RAISE grant. That's to pay for sidewalks, right? So we pay for sidewalks out of our capital improvement plan, which is bonded. So in theory, that would help alleviate debt service, but that in particular wouldn't directly affect the operating budget. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But that's something we're going to look at and have conversations about over the next several weeks.
But what about the infrastructure grant that we were waiting on? Did we ever get that, or?
Are you referring to I think it's the $5 million, it was the streets grant, Braxton, if I remember correctly, it was a $5 or $6 million, one of the infrastructure grants that we received.
Safe Streets for All grant, that grant is for planning and demonstration projects. So again, really no impact in terms of operating budget, other than we may be able to offset to some of those grant funds some of the money that we're spending on consultants for doing traffic studies. So opportunity there, right? But fairly limited, okay?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, because, you know, when I hear a grant, I'm thinking, this is just me, I'm thinking, oh, we're going to save some money, a little bit of money. And then now that we've looked at the numbers and, whoa, we've got to find some money, I just didn't know how much that would offset on any and all grants that we get. That's all I'm saying. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Nice haircut, John.
Thanks.
Councilwoman Hiller.
With that in mind, again, for us to be thinking about, you know, for instance, the sidewalks are things that we normally wouldn't have done with city money anyway. You know, all these neighborhood sidewalks, arguably. And so to look at what we do go after the grants for, make sure as much that we can, I mean, we know anyway if it's extra or if it's something that's a core expense that we had to do, rebuilding our streets, for instance, our half-cent sales tax that we do now. And even looking bigger. I mean, we've got 2 more, this is Karen's opinion, we did not do what we could have to offset the dollars that we as a local government are paying for the percentage share of the interstate of Polk Quincy Viaduct. It's $22 million that we borrowed. And we've got 2 more segments coming up. So looking ahead again to 26 and 27 and beyond, and laying the groundwork for making sure if we can still get that 22 million knocked out. We had support for it and we didn't go for it. And that's a shame. And one way or another to make sure that these big things that we know are coming up, that we minimize as much as possible as well. Because those are huge debts, and then the debt service is killer. So.
Okay. Thank you, City Manager. Thank you, Josh, Ben. Thank you very much. Move on to the next non-action item for discussion. Madam Clerk.
Discussion related to a resolution introduced by Councilmember Spencer Duncan urging all taxing entities, including the state of Kansas and city of Topeka, to keep mill levies at the lowest possible rates.
City Manager, or should we just defer to Councilman Duncan?
Yes, sir, if we could defer to Councilman Duncan.
Thank you, Mayor. I know it's late. I'm not going to take long, I promise. I appreciate consideration of this at all. Nothing to vote on tonight. Vote on it hopefully in a couple weeks. This is a non-binding resolution. Does not force us to take any action or push us on a specific path that makes us only do one thing or the other. What it does do is a couple things, and these are the couple quick reasons why I would like us to consider it and why I brought it forward. First of all, we obviously know in this community that there's concerns about property tax rates and all the issues related to that. And I know, having been on this council now for 5 years and sat through these budget meetings, that we do care about that, and we do take it into consideration every year. It is at the forefront of our conversations what the impact of that is to homeowners, particularly those in the middle to low incomes, but I'm not sure that message always gets across very well. And so the first thing this resolution does is lets the citizens know we hear you, we are listening, we do recognize the importance of that to you, and as it always has been, it is part of our discussion as we work through our budget process and something that we absolutely consider with every step that we take. The second part of that resolution is, this is a complicated system. There are 8 taxing entities in this county. This resolution does not demand any of the others do anything. It's not saying you must do this or else the city will believe this or take these steps. What it does do is recognize that within 8 taxing entities, we all have an important role to play, but we have for too long lived in our own silos and existed in these silos without recognizing that we are one unit, that every time we make a decision, it impacts those other taxing entities and all the citizens of Topeka who live within the city limits. So it recognizes that and asks those others to work with us to break down those silos. It's asking them to recognize this connectivity as they consider their budgets and work with us and as a collective together to look for some of the property tax solutions that we all need, because one of us can't solve the problem. It's a state issue, it's a county issue, it's a city issue, it's a school district issue, it's some of those other libraries, universities, and other taxing transit issues. So we've got to work together to do that, and this asks them to consider that connectivity as they work through their budget processes, and let's start having a conversation as a collective to each figure out this problem. The last thing it does is it does attempt to send some message to the state of Kansas as they have this conversation the past couple years. As everybody knows, my day job is I work for the League of Kansas Municipalities, spend every day up there during this session on behalf of not just this city in my role as a council person, but for all the cities of Kansas. There has really created a system of discussion up there of them pointing the finger at us, saying, you are the problem, you'd better fix it, or else we're going to take actions against you. Again, yes, we have a role to play, but so do they. In the last several years, they have sort of refused to look in that mirror and make that acknowledgement to some level. But there are efforts by some legislators to do that. And I think as the capital city, it's okay to send 2 messages to them that say, first of all, work on it. Work on your piece of this in association with the rest of us to solve this problem. And second of all, hold yourself to the same standard you hold us to. There are several laws on the books, for instance, the revenue neutral rate vote that we have to take, that they have exempted themselves from. The legislature collects 21.5 mils in property tax. They never have to go to their floor and take a revenue neutral rate vote. They just collect the difference without having that accountability. It's okay to ask them for the same accountability they ask of us. So this resolution does do that in a polite way and just says, hey, what's good for us should also be good for you because we are all in this together. So that is the purpose of this resolution. I do think it's important as the capital city that we sometimes take the lead on these things. We do have a voice. They're right here in our backyard, and they do listen to us sometimes if we holler loud enough. I know there's a few who've got some language questions. Councilwoman Hiller sent me a few, which I'm very much open to. So over the next week, if you've got you like a little word tweaked or there's a little thing you don't quite like, I'm open to that, to bring it back here when we meet again in 2 weeks and propose those changes if we can hopefully pass it. So just send me those and I will incorporate what I can, and if not, we can have that conversation. But I appreciate it, and that's the purpose behind this, to just sort of give us a voice in this conversation to help lead the charge to address what's a growing issue that is not going away, no matter how much we would like it to just, disappear. So, thank you, Mayor.
Mm-hmm. Deputy Mayor.
Right on. That is impressive. I've got to say that. Good job. I really like that. I like the talk about bringing down the silos. I like the collective aspect of it. I like it to where we become more involved as a city. I like taking it to the legislature and having them look in their mirror. I like all of that. And I just hope that however this resolution comes about, if it ends up passing, that we can actually get the messaging out to them in this polite way that you're talking about, to bring people to the table to talk. And I will definitely look it over to see if there's any changes, but that is very impressive. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. If I can ask you a question, Spencer, you referenced your day job.
Yep.
With your day job, do you see other entities at all trying to also get this kind of attention to all their respective taxing entities at the state level?
Yeah, the counties are becoming very much more active in looking for some reform measures that the legislatures put forward and that other ideas have, because as you know, the counties are much more reliant on property tax than we are.
Mm-hmm.
They really don't have the three-legged stool like we do. They get a very small portion of property tax. They don't have a lot of fees. So for them, they are trying to find the balance between keeping those mill levies at a acceptable rate while also funding a lot of very important services that even we as a city need them to fund to even function and operate. So the counties are very involved in that. And again, there are some legislators who have brought forth some reforms that I think can be viable. I think a lot of the other taxing entities have just sort of sat back and waited to see who's going to actually step up and lead. And I think once a few do, they'll follow, because I think everybody's looking for some solutions.
We've made different attempts, and to some degree with some success, in bringing forward issues like this to our Shawnee County delegation so that we can have a real platform when session comes back into place and we're not at the last minute putting together something like this. Will this resolution, will they get a chance to participate in it before or after, before we vote on it?
Well, no, but the extension of this resolution, and I think I mentioned this maybe a month ago, is sort of one of several things I hope we can do.
Mm-hmm.
The next one is sometime next month, probably late August, Policy and Finance will meet and start the legislative platform discussion that we can bring to the city before the end of the year. And I know we plan to maybe put a few of the actual ideas into that platform, which then we can take to the delegation and say, hey, it's not just rhetoric of you fix it. Here's a couple of things we think you could actually do to fix it, to actually be part of the solution. So I think that's the next level of what we can engage them in, to give them something actual to take to the State House in January.
Well, good. And that's why I ask is, beyond the resolution, what next steps are, and that makes sense. Yeah, that's good work.
Thank you.
Anyone else for discussion? All right, thank you. we'll move on. We don't have to have public comment, so we can jump to announcements. And we can start with Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to remind everybody to go vote next Tuesday. Thank you.
Councilman Banks?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councilman Kell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A major error was made prior to the U.S. military war dog and the Topeka Warhawks at Hummer Sports Park on July 9th. A fallen service member was scheduled to be recognized, and due to a major miscommunication, that did not happen the way it was planned. The U.S. military war dogs, and especially myself, would like to apologize to the family for what happened, and I would like to recognize the fallen service member again. Kyle G. Thomas, a Topekan and a graduate of Topeka West, was killed in action on September 25th, 2003, when a roadside improvised explosive device exploded while he was on patrol in Kirkuk, Iraq. Kyle was married to his longtime friend Carrie Dyke on July 6th, shortly before being stationed in Camp Erdel, Viscina, Italy, with the 173rd Airborne Brigade, the Sky Soldiers. It was said that Kyle lived more in his 23 years than most people did in a lifetime. He was a modern Renaissance man, a craftsman, a builder, a professional ballet dancer, photographer, mechanic, avid outdoorsman, and nature lover. He was a friend to all he met and strived to do everything he did with excellence. The story of his final moments on earth was the subject of a chapter in a book, Blood, Tears, and IVs by Alyssa Lonsdale, published in 2005. Kyle received several honors and awards from the Army, an Army Service Ribbon, National Defense Service Medal, Parachutist Badge, Bronze Star posthumously, and a Purple Heart posthumously. His parents, Raymond and Deborah, and his brother, Craig, live in Topeka. As a veteran, a representative of the War Dogs, and a representative of the city of Topeka, I sincerely apologize to Kyle's family for the miscommunication and what happened the other night with not having him recognized the way he was supposed to. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Miller?
Nothing here. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Is Councilman Dobler still online, or is he checked out? Okay. Councilman Duncan?
Thank you, Mayor. Just very quickly, kind of along the military lines, my cousin, Sierra Ransom, who is a Topekan, has spent the last several years down in Florida at Military Academy. She is a Marine. She was recently promoted to a second lieutenant, so she will now be leading people as a Marine. Seems like a very polite, nice person when you meet her in person, and she is. It's hard to believe sometimes, though, when she puts that uniform on, how she changes, and that she is actually a Marine, but good for her, and so I just wanted to honor her, both as my cousin and as a Topekan out there doing good in the world. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank her for her service. Councilman Hofer?
I'm just going to remind people that we're coming up on National Night Out this coming Saturday. I have 2 different neighborhood groups that are going to be meeting. They're scheduled, I believe, all through August and into September, but next Tuesday from 4 to 7 at Westridge Mall, they're going to have like the main event where everyone in town is welcome. They're going to have members of the police department, the fire department, the sheriff's department, AMR, anyone who's in safety. And if you would like to come out and see everything going on, I'm sure it will be more in the press, but it is Tuesday, August 6th from 4 to 7 p.m. at Westridge Mall on the 1st floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hiller?
Nothing.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. A couple of things. One, we just kind of late with this happening, but wanted to bid a fond farewell to our former executive assistant to the city council office, Liz Toyne. Her last day was Friday, and we had a nice little going away reception for her, and we wish Liz good luck on her future endeavors. And also, we'd like to give a great warm welcome to our 2 new executive assistants to the city council office, and that would be Tanya Boyd, who's just right over there, and Tara Jeffries. So they are learning the ropes, and we are excited to have them on board and part of the team. The other thing I just wanted to remind the governing body about, and anybody that may be listening, is that part of changing our culture of property maintenance where we're at right now is we are on an aggressive education, I don't know what you would call it, education push for the enhanced retaliatory eviction ordinance that we have. Our partnership with Kansas Legal Services, our partnership with HCCI to not only inform landlords, what their rights are, Kansas landlord-tenant law, but also the tenants out there that are fearing eviction. We have educational materials that governing body, if you need those, you need to reach out to us or to Code Compliance or to HCCI, because we have a fund set up, that could at times possibly represent folks that may be experiencing retaliatory eviction. This is something that we are very honed in on because we know that there's a number of challenges that tenants have with some unscrupulous landlords. We continue to see a plethora of code compliance calls coming in where landlords are not, even though there's a wealth of good landlords in the city, where bad landlords are not doing their due diligence by tenants. And so this is one of the really aggressive pieces of the change in our culture of property maintenance, and it does behoove us all as governing body members to understand where you can access that information so then you can pass that on to your constituents. So thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I was remiss in not recognizing the city clerk for announcements. Brenda?
Let's see, so the August 6th governing body meeting has been canceled. That's pursuant to Resolution 9481 due to primary elections. And then the city manager is calling a special budget meeting of the governing body on August 27th at 6 p.m. in the Cyrus K. Holiday Building, first floor conference room.
Thank you. City manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to remind everybody as we're at the onset of our police chief recruitment, that we do have a public survey open. It's in English and Spanish. It's posted on our Facebook page. And I believe some of the news stations are also carrying the link. Essentially what we're trying to do is seek from the public their input on the attributes that our next police chief should have. In addition to the online survey, beginning on Thursday, we're hosting in-person meetings to seek input from the community as well. The information should be on our Facebook page as well. We'll do Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at different times throughout the day so that anybody who wants to come and publicly speak has that opportunity as well. We will take the information that we get from the public as we'll take that into consideration as we craft the job description for our police chief. Thank you, Mayor.
I just have a couple of things in acknowledging a tragic accident that happened in our city, and we had 2 fatalities. I've been talking about speeding in this town and running red lights and not observing our traffic laws. Without any details on the investigation of how the accident occurred, I'm not saying that those were the reasons that accident happened, but please, it involved motorcycles, and motorcycles are sometimes very hard to see when you're out driving. Just give some attention to the road and the traffic, and condolences to the families who are impacted by that by that fatality. And again, like Councilwoman Ortiz said, very important votes coming up. Don't be somebody who says, I'm going to sit this one out. You've got to vote. And I encourage you to vote, take some people with you, make plans to make sure you don't miss it. It's extremely important. Choose wisely, find out as much as you can about your candidates, and I think that's the last of what we have in the way of announcements. Councilwoman Ortiz?
Yes, I do want to ask a question to the Changing Culture team, and it doesn't have to be answered tonight, but what does a tenant do that the landlord pulls their meter from their house to condemn the property, and then they get evicted? That's the question. That's the question here. Because, yep, that's something I think we need to look at. Because he wanted him out so bad, that tenant out so bad, because he got hurt, because that tenant didn't have the proper heating, and he was heating off of a facility, and he got medically hurt. And since 2008, he paid his rent until April of this year. And then the landlord called and had their meter removed, and then they called code, and then they said that house is inhabitable because there is no running water. Where does this apply to that landlord? Because he's doing it for those reasons. Because they're saying that. I want to thank the city attorney for giving me that information to give to the family, but that's the kind of things we have going on out there. So, I just a food for thought.
No. I don't know what the noise is.
Marcus, you're not on mute, baby.
I know I came off to ask you a question. Is this the 21st and Adams?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood, because I think I know who owns that property, and I'm not going to do service.
That's all I want to say, Marcus. That's all I want to say.
I hear you, but I'll say it if you don't want to say it.
That's all I want to say. I'm just asking the question with your landlord retaliatory eviction. Where does this situation? Because this is just one of many.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I've got the dates.
Pardon?
If I may, what I did was check the dates for what Deputy Mayor brought up, because the can't answer that question, but there are 2 eviction sessions, free ones for the public, coming up in the next 2 weeks. The first one is one which is a partnership of our Changing Our Culture partnership. Housing and Credit Counseling, Inc. is doing one at their offices at 1195 Buchanan on August 1 this week. From 3 to 5, the program will be about landlord-tenant law and retaliation protection. And then they'll take a break, and from 5:15 to 7, it will be on fair housing. And then on August 15th, Kansas Legal Services is also a partner, thanks to Amanda getting that set up. And they're going to be doing an eviction education program at the library at 6 p.m. So if people want to explore prior cases or something they're facing or wonder about, those are both available to the full public soon.
Okay, thank you. There is a need for 3 executive sessions this evening. So if the city attorney will read for our first.
The motion would be to recess into executive session for a time not to exceed 45 minutes to discuss personnel matters involving one or more individual employees as allowed under KSA 754319B1. The open meeting will resume in this room in the Cyrus K. Holliday Building. The following individuals will be necessary to aid the governing body in its discussion: City Manager Perez and anyone else he deems necessary.
Okay, you've heard that need for an executive session. I have a motion to adjourn into executive session. Deputy Mayor moves to approve, seconded by Councilwoman Hofer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, good. All ayes. All right, we will recess it immediately into executive session. Is it open? Are we on? Okay. We have reconvened into the open meeting. We've finished our discussions in the first executive session. No action has been taken by the governing body during that executive session. There is a need to go into another executive session if the city attorney will read.
The motion is to recess into executive session for a period of time not to exceed 20 minutes to discuss the acquisition of real property for various purposes as justified by KSA 754319B6. The open meeting will resume in this room in the Cyrus K. Holiday Building. The following staff will be necessary to assist the governing body in its deliberations: City Manager Perez and any other staff he deems necessary.
Okay. Is there a motion to entertain to go into executive session? Moved by Councilman Kell. I'll second it. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Yes. Yes, okay, we'll immediately go into executive session. Okay, we have reconvened the meeting and are now back in open session with no action being taken by the governing body during the executive session. There's a need for one more executive session if the city attorney will read, please.
The motion would be to recess into executive session not to exceed 10 minutes to discuss matters deemed privileged under attorney-client privilege as allowed under KSA 754319B2. The open meeting will resume in this room in the City Cyrus K. Holiday Building. The following staff will be necessary to assist the governing body in its deliberations: City Attorney Stanley and other staff the governing body finds necessary.
Okay. Is there a motion to go into our executive session? If not, I'll make the motion. Second by Councilman Kell. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Yes. Okay. Immediately recess into executive session. Okay. We have reconvened the meeting and we're open session. We concluded our discussions in the last executive session. No further business come before this body. This meeting is adjourned.